So yeah, this is just a. If I guess there's some names here I don't recognize from before. So essentially, how it works is we usually have guests in, but today it's just literally in just an open chat. We're just all here to chat about all things RV, ask questions, give advice, and pretty much share anything we want. So how we usually do it is if someone's speaking and you want to maybe interject or ask something, usually you stick your hand up and you do that by using the reactions button. And you have to bear with me because my Zoom just updated and it's all changed. Which the for me anyway on a PC the button is it's down at the bottom with a little heart on it that says react. Yeah, and it's got a little hands up button there that you can stick. You raise your hand, and then we'll get you and answer your question and so on. As I said, the topic's generally RV or RV related. Anyone can ask, share, or yeah, say what you want, but within reason as well. We don't like people to like go on for massive amounts of time and hog the space if possible. So with that, I guess it's welcome to everyone, especially anyone new that's here for the first time. And yeah, we're just here to talk about RV. So if anyone's got any questions that they want to ask anyone in the room, or if they got anything to share, then please, you know, be the first person to do so, or put your hand up. Go for it, Carl.
Does. Tell us what it was like being interviewed by Sarah Westfall.
Um, yeah, Sarah's a very nice interviewer. Um, I have to be honest. I don't know too much about her recording history. I know she's got a very popular podcast. Um, and yeah, and she's a very easy person to get on with and very knowledgeable about all types of things RV, but a lot of other subjects as well. Um, Mainly subjects that I would call a lot more fringe. That she's interested in. Yeah, so she's very nice. One of the nicest people to work with. And coincidentally, she just signed up today for mentoring with me in 2025 as well.
She did
So she,
it. That's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
Wow.
she signed
Wow.
up. So yeah, she'd be taking the class, and
Wow.
she'll be a hopefully if she can stick to it. Hopefully she'll be a proper remote viewer herself. Within a few
Wow.
short months.
Yeah, I'm quite a fan because I've been following her Substack for quite a while. And I got that because I followed a packet from Cliff High. I was following Cliff High and he suggested follow all of these. And she was one of them, and I really enjoy her work. So I was super impressed that she found you because she found you, didn't she?
Yeah, yeah. She found us with the guys at Future Forecasting Group. Yeah, and I think we've done a couple of two or three podcasts with her now, and I think we recently. I don't know if I should be saying this. Really, we this last month we did work an RV target for her as well.
Yeah, I
Um,
think she's announced it.
oh, is she?
I think she did announce it,
Okay,
yeah. So some of it's free and then some of it's behind a paywall.
right, gotcha.
So
Yeah.
yeah, very interesting. Wow.
Yeah, so if anyone, if anyone's interested in the fringe side of things, you can find her on pretty much all platforms. She's on X and or Twitter, formerly Twitter and all over the place.
Yeah. And anybody else been coming and finding you and interviewing you?
Um, no, not yeah, yeah, they are, but I'm turning a lot down at the moment because everyone wants to talk about the project that you and Dimmy were reviewers on, the alien interview. I've had like I've done the one the one that you know about with John and Richard Dolan. Um, But now, and Cosmic Road, I did one with a guy. I don't know if you've seen that, Coral, but there's a big UFO UAP podcast on YouTube every day. It's called Cosmic Road.
Oh,
Um,
well, because they're talking a little bit about what's going on in Congress at the moment,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah, okay, I've seen bits of that. It's on my Twitter. So
yeah. Don, well, we'll see if we can post some links in the in the chat there, and if anyone else wants to as well, if yeah, and that's something else I should have said as well. If anyone doesn't verbally want to ask any questions or anything, please use the chat button down below as well. And if you can type your questions up there or comment to anyone in there, we will try our very best to get to those as well. I'll see if I can pull it out. Have a look at it there.
That the interview that she did with you on the Antarctica, and there's a free bit that you can see on YouTube. She's called
Okay.
Sarah Westfall. She's got a very nice Substack, very interesting, quite fringe, as you said.
Yeah, we just worked a project for her, and Naeem's just come in as well. I won't say much about the project, other than it was a bit weird because it's probably one of the only times at Future Forecasting that all of us didn't get any target, well, any what we felt was any target related information about what she wanted, but we all described the very same thing. So that was a weird one. Be interesting to see how that one, what she thinks about that as a client and how that one pans out. Yeah, and that doesn't really happen very often, and it's kind of weird that we all describe the same thing on that as well. Awesome. Yeah. So anyone got any questions, please put them in the chat window there. But yeah, if you got, we're here to chat or talk, discuss, share stuff. So if anyone's got anything to say, then put your hand up and let's talk about it. Like for example, to kick things off, several of us here presented to and went to the IRVA conference. Does anyone have any, thoughts and comments on how they felt that went this year? Oh, bear with me, I'm letting some more people in. Come on, someone must have an opinion.
Well, it was my first time. I never attended IRVA conference before. It was fun listening to all the experienced people and such a great thing that event like this can exist and there is a tradition. But of what I understand, it was the first time kind of gathering people from Europe, right? So that seems nice.
It did have a big gathering, a contingent from the German areas of Europe for the first time. Yeah, because I think Urva is expanding into it's rolling out individual branches in different countries. So yeah, I think it's going quite well over there at the moment. Yeah, that was good to see. Did you are you new to remote viewing? Did you learn much from the conference?
Yeah, I'm new. I've been doing it for a little longer than a year, but yeah, it was good. I've heard many of the speakers, some of the speakers before,
Yeah.
and I've been following your work, Daz also. But it was interesting, like yeah, just hearing different thoughts and theories about RV, and yeah, just great opportunity to have an event like this. But I was wondering, have you guys had anything in Europe before, kind of like centered for people in Europe?
We've um we've arranged a smaller not conference, I would say, a smaller get together. And I think we've had five of those now, arranged by myself and Rick Hilliard in central London. And but it's a bit more exclusive in that it's invite. We only invite people, so it's invite only. So it's limited to around like 20 people. Um, and we generally just pick people or select people to invite that we feel are doing RV to kind of look forwards in the future, advancements in RV rather than people talking about projects they did like 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, which, used to happen a lot within RV conferences at one point. So we have done that in the past. I have talked to Carl that I'm thinking about maybe um, running something a bit bigger myself in Europe this year, organizing a big proper meet because the invite one's good because we do get to see what other people, especially people a bit more professional, that have businesses, because they don't mind talking about their clients in a closed group. So we get to see that kind of knowledge. But of course, having a closed conference or experience doesn't allow the newer people to come along and meet people and ask questions and learn about that kind of thing as well. So I did briefly talk to Carl about maybe us jointly or organizing something in London or Europe for 2025. We shall see. I have to be honest, I was going to see how the fallout, what the economical fallout was of the new US president at the beginning of the year first to see how things pan out on that one. But it is an option, definitely.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah. Don, go for it.
Hey, so for all of the attendees that were at IRVA, I guess I'm wondering what your thoughts were about all the experimental design stuff they had up front on the first day. A lot of people there talking about proposing experiments, new experiments, collecting data, experimental design. Let me just say my point of view. Trying to prove that RV works has already been done. And it's already been swept under the rug so many times. I was just watching this thing by that's now on Netflix by that reporter that was like very early into like saucer recovery and stuff like that. And we've all read about these studies about the experiments and the statistics and the analysis, and then how it was universally just thrown away, and then they make up some sort of like statement. So I get it. If you're a statistician, you want to do statistics, you want to create experiments, but I'm just wondering if there's a better way.
A better way than verifying with statistics, you mean?
Well, if you look at the like the UFO community, they've sort of got their own thing going with MUFON and other sort of like stuff. It's almost like the grassroots movements are sort of like picking up steam, and they're coming in from the other direction. It's like somebody doesn't want UFOs, ETs, maybe even remote viewing, maybe even channeling, coming forward, having people talk about it. Maybe they feel threatened. That's where I'm coming from. Daz, you must have some opinions on this.
I mean, I like the experimental stuff, and the people coming up with the theories and ways to measure and all that kind of stuff. I don't know though. It's useful. I personally would just like to see a lot more, examples, people using it, more than I want to. Yeah, the experimental stuff, I feel would be better off written up as papers and as science in articles.
Yeah, but how many of these do we need? Any more of them? I mean, like.
Yeah. Well, we still don't know how.
I think
RV
the more
works.
the merrier, right? Because they're doing this within the context of academia, which is always going to be behind the curve of what we're doing as practitioners. And the more positive results you get, the stronger the argument you can make. And I know, like, it's already a really strong argument, but you got to think those researchers are working in universities. There's undergraduates coming up who are seeing that there's professional parapsychologists. They're going and presenting their work in mainstream or more mainstream kind of environments. So it's not just doing the research. I think hopefully they're having a positive like effect on the mind share and influencing future generations of academics, because it's like a dead man's shoes kind of game, academia, isn't it? Progress happens one funeral at a time. So it's important there's people in that environment who are showing the next generation of people yeah, Psi research is valid research. It's real research. You should take it seriously. We just got to be patient with those guys.
All right. So anyway, that was my.
I also think that Ed May is very generous with his time, and happy to talk to people about how to do Psi research as well. I mean, he's been doing that his whole life. So.
Yeah, I know very little about Ed May. What just struck me about the IRVA conference was some people were pitching a whole experimental design with no data yet. You know, it's like, okay.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. The presentations that were actual researchers, I found them really interesting. Like the OBE studies one, where they were showing us the labs where they were going to get people to have OBE. I thought that was really cool. It was nice to see behind the curtain how they're doing that. But yeah, it was like there's no results.
Yeah.
Like we're going to do it, and next year, the year after, we'll tell you what happened. Which is a bit of a disappointment, isn't it?
It is. Well, it was for me anyway.
But it's nice to see they're doing it, right? Better than not doing it.
Seemed like a long wait, you know, one after another. Anyway, I'll let somebody else talk.
No, it's great that it's great that you brought that up, Don, and because we got a comment from in the chat here from Fabian saying that he didn't get to attend. So he's interested in getting a recap on what was presented and what we all thought of it.
Well,
I went through the program afterwards and counted how many presentations I liked and thought were decent, and I was happy that I watched them. And it was about half of them, which is pretty good ratio for any reasonable size conference.
Yeah, I felt about the same. Yeah.
This was definitely my favorite IRVA so far.
Yeah, it was like not without the odd presenter who you're like, who let them in? But generally, it was good.
Yeah.
Also, to give credit where credit is due, it was very kind of Deborah Lynn Katz to extend a discount out to the RV Discord. So if you happened to be a member of the Discord and got the discount code, you could get a much more affordable ticket than we usually get.
Yeah, that was really cool of her.
Yeah, that all helps. Absolutely. But yeah, I thought they did well. I thought because it was all Zoom this year, I thought that was handled very well. I particularly liked the translation for the German speakers. That helped really, and that worked very well, I thought.
Yeah, it's seamless
as a process.
It was my first IRVA conference too, and it was really cool. I agree on the the research with no data thing being kind of annoying, but I mean it was cool research projects, but I wanted to like kind of know what was happening. The exception being kind of the AI one, which I think they did have some data for. That was really neat to see what people are doing with training models to jump between session data and feedback. I feel like that could be a pretty revolutionary thing for getting sessions out to people in a format that they can understand. Because I mean, for us looking at scratches on a page, it's fine, we get it, but like the general public, they need something a little more tangible, I think, to latch on to most of the time.
That was potentially revolutionary, wasn't it? Like the technology that they've got there has the potential to have like an AI choosing ARV target pairs, tasking the viewers, analyzing the sessions, doing all of the crunching the number.
Well, your mic's cut out, David. You've gone silent.
Hang on, do I need to get a bit closer to it?
It's back.
The work they've done to characterize targets on like numinosity and how alive is it and how much is it moving and how man-made is it and whatever. So they've got really good metadata about the images. It was really impressive. It was one of my favorite talks, I think.
Yeah, I like that one too. Yeah, definitely.
I really liked what you and Daz and Deborah all presented kind of right in a row there. You guys all did some really cool presentations, I think, just on alternative approaches to RV outside of maybe the scientific method, treating it more artistically and free flowing. That's kind of what I've been playing with myself more often these days, is a less structured approach and jumping into targets quickly and that kind of stuff. So it was cool to see some presentations that were about that and about moving forward from just the original military roots and looking into each individual developing their skills and style as artists and as practitioners. I've always seen remote viewing as an art form, like a good hybrid of art and science, and it's like music production in that way to me. And so it was just cool to see more people sort of talking about that aspect of it, because I feel like that gets missed a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I totally agree on that. And yeah, it was nice to see that. It was like a fresh approach this year, I guess, maybe due to there being a slightly less lack of military kind of and CRV influence at the conference, I think.
It was post CRV Irva, wasn't it? Come on.
Yeah.
Everyone was talking about, what can we do that isn't CRV? Can we move on finally after all these years?
Yeah, that was an intentional thing, right? I mean, seemed like a real sort of like backbone to that conference, getting away from the military stuff, I guess.
I don't know if it was intentional, because like I know when I put together what I was going to talk about, it wasn't like push, there was no push to go in that direction or anything. It was just the way I did it, and it just ended up being like several of the others, all moving in that kind of general direction. I guess things are changing. We're evolving with this.
Yeah, with my power going off, I don't know when my computer's going to shut off. But I would say I really can't speak for IRVA, even though I'm on the board, without there being a motion and an approval, and then I can speak for IRVA. So speaking for myself, I would say that the intention this year was the globalization. Luciano Arruda has just been fabulous about getting our videos transcribed into Portuguese, Dutch, Spanish, German. So, we did only have the live interpreter for the Germans this year, but all the recordings that are going to be available, you can evidently get in Spanish and Portuguese, and may have been another. So that's what we were the most excited about. That was our intent this year. As for the speakers, I think part of that had to do with they were side effects of having that globalization. So, but as I understand it, I've only been on the board 2 years. But as I understand it, when it started 25 years ago, it was never intended to be CRV only. Russ Targ is very much a natural remote viewer, or was teaching something called natural remote viewing. Am I correct?
I think so, yes. Yep.
Yeah, and he was the first president of IRVA. And I don't think they ever intended for it to be only CRV, but maybe that's where the volunteers were for the first 20 years. And things started changing a lot 3 years ago when Deborah became president, because she really wanted to get back. She really wanted to focus on our mission statement with the research, and she started the IRU unit. Yeah. And they've got plans next year for 4 or 5 studies. And she also wanted to offer the education opportunities, and IRVA Ed rolled out under her presidency. And getting Luciano on for the globalization, so yes, things are changing, and we really need to thank Deborah for a lot of that. She works us very hard.
Are you guys at IRVA pleased with the how it all went and the response you've got from the attendees and everyone?
We haven't had a formal meeting since, but I would say that we're all kind of exhausted and and that we were very happy. I mean, even David Morehouse, who spoke for the very first time, he was so into this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do. And it felt so good to know that we were already doing those things. He's just not up to speed yet on what Irva's done.
Yeah.
So he was like the best cheerleader of what we need to do and keep doing. And yeah, we've already got our feet on the ground and need to keep running. So, and if anybody wants to volunteer, you know, I suppose the best email is contact@irva.org. We need lots of people to keep these sort of things running and to make safe places for, just like you do with your chats, for people to meet. So.
Thanks for that, Julia. Yeah, as I said, I think they did a great job this year. The Zoom experience was very fluid this year. You know, we know it's all involving technology, so it's very easy for things to go wrong. But yeah, it went very smooth. Quality was good as well of the you know, of the video that I was seeing and stuff. So yeah, hopefully, you know, it's like everything in it. It's like a in production. It's trying to get better each year, and it seems to be improving. So yeah, I look forward to see what happens next time. The only thing is, I would say though, being in the UK, some of the talks like Don's I didn't get to see because it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. And for me, it's just I stayed up as long as I could, but some of the talks I just had to miss the later talks because it's
I
could do
noticed
it on Eastern time next year.
Yeah, it was. We lost most of Europe by the time I went on.
Yeah, it was just a bit too much for me. I was hanging after a whole day, sat down in the same chair. It's like you need to get some sleep. You need to get up and walk around for a bit.
Well,
David, David, I was like really surprised you were able to switch your talk like at the last minute. You were going to talk about Cowboy. You even said you were going to do that. And then I don't know whether you used the same slides and sort of like bluffed your way through.
I hadn't made the slides. I managed to switch my talk at the last minute because I wrote it at the last minute.
You wrote your talk at the last minute.
Well, I did it in the week before, you know.
Yeah, me too.
We had to throw the slides in. But, you know, you can't leave too much time for these things. Otherwise, you end up second guessing them and overanalyzing things. And it's best to just get it all.
I was amazed at what you were coming up with. I mean, like your speaking ability is truly impressive. I mean, you know, wow.
Oh, thank you.
We should get him to do more.
Hey, pay up.
Anything more on the Irva stuff, guys? Anyone got any questions on Irva or anything that you know? Do you need to be pointed in the right direction on links or anything? You're all good on that. Someone asked in the chat, is there replays? It was all recorded. I think Julia kind of talked about it a bit. Is it going to be publicly available, Julia, or do you have to be a member to access the videos?
I believe the policy is that you pay for the video before or after. Now it's going to probably take months, you know, for this to all be released again. But it would be available to the paid members to watch the ones that they missed, everything, you know, including the ones they missed. And the ones that hadn't paid yet can purchase it. And then I believe after a year, it goes into availability for all members without charge. And our memberships, I think, vary from like $49 and up. So membership keeps you on a mailing list and it gets you our full library, even though we do have a great deal of the library that is video and otherwise it's available to non-members.
Yeah, Julie, what I remember is it's 2 years when it becomes free. So you have to buy them if you have. And then, and by the way, there are some Ingo Swann videos in their archive that everybody needs to see. It's really, you know, his thing about reality boxes. Is that the term he used as?
Yeah.
That's an eye opener.
Awesome stuff. Excellent, guys. Is that it on the Irva one? We can want to move to a different topic. If anyone's got a different topic, there's no hands up at the moment. Are there any questions in the chat here? Let me just have a look at that. Don't think so, actually. Well, you all attended, so some of you must have something you want to talk about.
Well, I would talk about mine, except most people haven't seen it yet, so there's not a whole lot to say.
Well, you can give us a brief overview and tell, because didn't you made a video of yours previously, though? Is it the same presentation or slightly different? Can they go online to find that?
Okay, so let me give the audience here a little bit of a heads up what's going on. We published a video on YouTube called We Channeled Egyptian Pharaoh Akhenaten. It was a combined remote viewing and channeling experiment. And what I was getting back was comments like, yeah, your channeling overlaid the video, you know, the remote viewers, and that's what they were reporting. And that's understandable because there was a big, huge part of the project that I didn't talk about, the front end part of the project, where we were looking into something else, and I'm not going to talk too much about this other than when we got to a certain point in our investigation, the remote viewer data was not expected. It was not talking about like what we were, you know, thinking about doing. And I started looking up into the historical sources, what was going on around this time. And it took I couldn't have done this at the time that I did my original video because it took so long to analyze all the data. But what I found out was we were researching a historical target. And while the viewers did validate the target and, you know, reported its fabrication and all sorts of things in a special way that I talked about in the IRVA presentation, the viewers were picking up something about a revolution, some sort of a mass exodus in the town. There's animosity and some sort of violence. And so I looked up on the historical sources, and there was a whole lot more information about this artifact that we were researching. And the data that we were coming up with was hinting at what remote viewers call data that's nearby. So we started like, I as the project manager, I started trying to like go down this route of, okay, this is data that's nearby. What's it all saying? You know, what are the historical sources saying? And we finally ran into a point where it seemed like what I needed was boots on the ground. I needed somebody who was an eyewitness to talk about what was going on. And so at that point, because the remote viewers were still busy and they were, you know, working sessions and stuff like that, I decided to use my spirit channeling, which was a hobby. I had been doing this for 26 years. And, you know, I've been, it's a hobby because, you know, you sort of like work your way into it. You start hearing words in your head. And I started using a pocket voice recorder, and I started transcribing what I heard into documents. And then I started studying those. And what I found particularly interesting was some of the words that I was hearing, I had to look up in the dictionary. I didn't know what they were even, you know, words and phrases that are not common to you. You might have picked up some of this if you're a remote viewer. This happens a lot to, the people have been doing remote viewing a lot. You'll get phrases, words and stuff that, you know, are just so unexpected. And that usually is pretty good data. I think, Daz, you even mentioned that you underlined some of these things when you perceive them.
Yeah, that's how. If a word's and I know what words are uncommon in my day-to-day usage, so I underline those and then I review them later on for more data.
So I tried this channeling thing as an experiment, and I did my usual treatment of it, which is, I recorded it, I transcribed it, and the data that I was getting, it was almost a little bit frightening in a way, because it seemed so on target with, first of all, I would ask a question and the answer wouldn't be an immediate answer. The answer would be dancing around, oh, this, and I know this, and and let me answer your question now. And this is how I can help you the most. That right there, that was like authentic. That really, to me, meant they had a mind. They could store the question that I was asking. They could dance around the answer, come back to it, and then answer the question. And I was like, whoa, this is really something. So the data that I got back hinted that there was bits of history that were not recorded that were important. So, and they also hinted that I needed to channel somebody else to get more information. So all of a sudden now I was like, going off on this tangent here. So I channeled this other person. And then they hinted yet another important detail, which I was like, man, this is really getting out there. But to get the final data on this thing, I had to go back in a third time. This is about the fifth or sixth total channeling that I did with all of these individuals. And that's the one that we published under We Channeled Egyptian Pharaoh Akhenaten. Now, a lot of remote viewers are not used to channeling, so, this is not going to make a lot of sense to you. But what I tried to do in that video, because I like to show people how to do things, how I do things, not how you read it in a book or how somebody teaches you how to do channeling. This is how I did it and how they interact with your subconscious, how they talk to you, how they want you to participate in their history so that they can see you with them in their history. This is truly amazing stuff. So once I sort of made the connection, they want you to use your imagination as kind of an entree. Then they can perceive you. Then they can explain things to you that you will not allow yourself to say or admit. You have to experience it yourself. This is words that they're saying to me. Okay? You have to experience this thing yourself in order for you to believe what you're saying. So anyway, Daz, to answer your question, all of that is in my IRVA presentation. I hope you do get a chance to see it. I think you'll really like it.
Might have to wait a while if they're not going to publish it for a while.
Yeah. Well, as an attendee and a speaker, you'll get a copy of it.
Yeah. As I said, Don, I'm just sorry I couldn't stay up that late.
We lost most of Europe, so I don't feel bad about it.
Before we go to Dimi, who has her hand up, iPad, the iPad on the list here had their hand up first. Are they still there? I'm trying to have a look here.
It's Silke.
Yeah, Silke.
Yes, I wanted to say something. The thing is, what Don said, there is a historical record that there was a revolution after the end of Akhenaten's reign. And the second thing is, I wanted to talk again about the globalization of Urva. In my opinion, we also should include people from non-Western countries, like, for example, Brazil or Eastern Europe, and I think for them, the fee still was expensive. So I really think there should be efforts to make the conference fees affordable for them. That's what I want to say. Thank you.
Zilka, this is the first time I'm hearing your voice. You participated in my ideogram experience experiment.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. I do.
Yeah, that's. I'm finally hearing your voice. I just want to say.
Yeah. But I mean, your channeling of Antenaton was very interesting. It just reveals a lot more about history. Maybe this could also help translate some texts or make a lot of archaeology more understandable. Though, of course, I know remote viewing is not really accepted socially. But I mean, it could be used as a hint, probably. Yeah, you just have to, yeah.
Yeah, this goes back to my whole thing about instead of like doing experiments and experimental designs, maybe we need more media. You know, get the media going out after remote viewing. Get remote viewing in the news. You know, that sort of thing. You know, that I think is what's going to pick up the steam on this.
Yeah, but I mean, it's still very difficult because remote viewing has a very weird reputation. I mean, of course, the good thing is it's on the CIA. It's in the CIA archive, but well, in the online FOIA documents. But on the other hand side, reputation has RV has a very bad reputation. It's as pseudoscience. Then there is also still the rumor regarding Scientology, even if Scientology just didn't invent it and uses it in a very different way. And then also it also has a political component because it's often regarded as being well, something conspiracy theorists do. And I mean, we have a lot of conspiracy theorists like that. And often these people are those who are interested in remote viewing. And so I find it's very difficult to get the media to accept it. Maybe in the US it's different, but I don't see how media in Europe would really start to accept it.
Can I jump in there?
Yeah.
I have a thought on that.
Yeah.
So in America, it's actually probably even worse than where you're at. No, it's very taboo. I think the best way, you're not going to convince anybody with statistics or anything like that. There needs to be games that people play. There need to be things that make it fun, that more people want to join and just do collaboratively. Example, the Sci Games that is coming up here in August of 2025. Has anybody heard of that? So there's going to be Chris Bledsoe is going to be a speaker there. There's going to be a handful of other remote viewing speakers there. Chris Bledsoe's UFO guy, not remote viewing guy. But yeah, I think that just having more people playing games with it and having fun with it is the way. The science way has been proven, and that's not going anywhere.
I think the artistic angle is probably helpful to the sort of broader acceptance too, right? Like showing remote viewing as an artistic, you know, presenting sessions in a way that's engaging to people and interesting visually and stuff, which, you know, isn't easy to do necessarily, but or presenting practical information like future forecasting type stuff, or or just interesting stuff like, you know, UFO stuff and things.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember that that preacher who got internet famous for predicting Trump getting shot?
Yeah.
Everybody was sharing the video, and he was kind of saying some unclear prophecy stuff, and this was right in the middle of it. But, you know, he called it and got loads of airtime.
Yeah.
I thought it was
the remote
Naeem
viewers
that
show
did
had
that.
some about.
Oh, he did it too.
Well, yeah, he did it too, but this random preacher in his sermon got the airtime, you know. I don't even know how we change that situation. Also, Josh, on presenting remote viewing to like the broader public, to people who are not interested in learning to do it, in terms of data, like I think it has got to be the practical stuff that people can make money about. You know, people care about like sex and money and death and power and things mostly. You know, they're not sitting there like, oh, I need to do self-transcendence and explore the spiritual realm. They're like, how am I going to get paid? So practical stuff is great, because I think the alternative is doing the woo-woo, which is not necessarily a great look. And I know loads of people are interested in it, but when you're trying to come up with a like remote viewing powered media operation, people just want to see stuff about fucking aliens and weird woo-woo things and all this
Yeah.
unfeedbackable crazy stuff. And it's like, it's great for storytelling, it's great fun, but it's ultimately useless, and it's not, you know, showing what remote viewing can do in a practical way.
But I mean, honestly, I have to say that remote viewing is very ideal. It's ideal for therapy. It's also ideal for education. You could probably also, for all sorts of work with clients in which you have to improve their lives. So I would, for example, you could, when you work as a teacher, you could use it for your students, just to see how to improve their learning process. Or you could use it, for example, to find out about the causes of trauma, or something like that. Or if it's about exams, you can use it to find out whether a student is going to pass an exam or not. So there are a lot of practical implications people probably are interested in. You can, in which remote viewing is really useful, and in which I also think you could show it to people this way. Yeah.
Well, is it remote viewing that's useful though, or is it intuition more broadly? Because quite commonly you hear stories of doctors and other medical professionals who are like super intuitive, and they're hearing voices saying like, oh, this person has this thing wrong with them, you should order this test. And so they do it, and their colleagues go, you're nuts. And then it comes back and they're right. And they never tell anybody that they're doing this, because they get kicked out and pilloried and lose their license. I'm sure there's lots of therapists and teachers and medical professionals who are using their intuition already, but there's just an environment they can't talk about it. And I don't see how remote viewing is going to help that, because it's too far of a jump, right, for us to get like, oh yeah, we're going to all learn CRV and do blind protocols and feedback and databases, and yet everyone's going to be like, what the hell are you talking about? We're not doing that. So maybe we should start with the intuition rather than the remote viewing, and not hope for too much too soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Intuition's like it's a broader category. Like RV is a way of using intuition, right? So if you lead with intuition and you get into RV, I think it's a little more palatable for some people.
Also, our RV is very natural. It's something we do all the time, and it's a sense we use all the time, but we don't train the sense in our culture. And
totally.
Yeah. And so as you said, it's better to refer to it as intuition, because that's what it is. And this way, probably an untrained sense, can get more accepted and get trained by the people. And I think it would improve the health of the population in general. I think people would have less psychological problems if something like intuition would be accepted.
Yes, it definitely would.
I'm hearing something that it sounds interesting to me. Hi, everybody. I'd say it's interesting how we're discussing how we would like to spread the word on remote viewing and spread intuition and all these things. And there's so much backlash that you can get from the general public in general. And what is funny to me is how Don said a little while ago, how when he was kind of channeling something, it didn't come right out and give him answers, but it wanted him to experience things for himself, and then it would come back with the answers later. Um, the data's there. So like you guys were already saying, the scientific stuff has already been done over and over and over again for decades. And so nobody needs to see that anymore, though people don't know about it. So it seems like at this stage, with all the information being out there, I think people like us really just need to kind of not worry about the acceptance and wait for people to come to us and ask questions like, well, how did you do this? We'll say, well, how do you think I did this? How do you think intuition works? And so I've stopped. I don't talk about remote viewing as much. Like when I'm with my family, it's no longer something I'm putting out there as much. I like it when they come to me and they start saying something like, well, Fabian, you know about this woo-woo stuff. What do you think? And I say, well, yeah, I know the woo-woo stuff. You got to wait. You got to stop calling it woo-woo stuff. What do you think you saw? And so I leave it to them. And what's great is that people will start using their own intuition and try, if there's somebody in your life, they'll start figuring out for themselves that they need to broaden their own horizons, and then answers are going to start coming to them. So I'm in no way interested in trying to convince people of anything anymore, especially with our current political climate in America. You know what? I'm not going to argue with anybody. I'm just going to let people say what they're going to say, believe what they're going to believe. And then people will start to gravitate toward you when you're being more quiet.
In concert with that, I like showing people. You guys know I do these videos. I really enjoy video because it's in my background and I find it very relaxing, but it can be very educational. And that's where I'm coming from. I like, right or wrong, I want to show you what's going on, what I'm experiencing, what it's like, how to do it. So, yeah.
Yeah. And video is a wonderful medium because it's one of the mediums where people will tune in, and whether they agree or not, they'll shut off everything and just watch for a little while. And it's it is a way of getting a captive audience, and people tend to suspend their disbelief on things when they're watching a video. They suspend their disbelief long enough to at least hear what's being said, because they're not in a place where they can argue back. They just they listen, and then things affect them a certain way, but they listen first. Unlike certain types of forums where you have people with competing ideals. So video's nice. So Don, I've watched your videos and they're great for just expressing something. Even if you're not trying to convince people of something, you're showing them your opinion or your experience through a video.
Yeah, my
So
experience.
I think it's a great capture. Yeah.
Yeah. And the fun, by the way, of doing these videos is trying to get it right. After you do your video, there's not necessarily done. I know you do this video because you're a video maker, but you have to watch it a million times and smooth it out, fix it up, tweak it, change parts,
Editing is writing.
So, it is like writing. I remember taking an audio course on how to write a book, and the guy said, it's all carpentry. It's banging nails. Am I right, Fabian, or what?
You're very right. Yeah, I look at video production like it's one of my children. When you make a video, it's labor intensive, and you're basically having a child. And then you've made your video, you feel really connected to it and you want to protect it, but you need to put it out there so people can actually watch it. So it's funny how personal video production can become, because you've been tied to a project, because making videos is not something you do. Like, how long does it take you to typically make a video, Don?
Oh man.
One of yours, because yours are sometimes 30, 45 minutes. It can take days.
Months.
Yeah.
Baby. And here's the thing, for people who don't do video, all right, if you have any sort of artistic experience, you can relate to this. The big deal with having a video production is coming back and watch it and then finding that one thing you're annoyed with that you could have changed, but you didn't. And now you have to live with it. Oh no, it's like terrible. You dread that moment so much that you will just keep watching this thing and finessing it until you think you've pounded down all the nails. I mean,
it's the same way with music production too, but there's that saying that art is never finished, only abandoned. And so you gotta get it to that 90% place sometimes with those couple little mistakes, and then put it out, or you're never gonna put it out because you're just gonna tweak and tweak and tweak forever. So it's about finding that happy medium.
Don't let perfect be the enemy of good.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
That's what we do with the whatever the hell our podcast is called, The Psychic Guys. Because I worked on the Cypher podcast before, which was like super tight production and so much editing, and every and ah was manually removed, and all the dialogue was like super tight, and everything was perfect. And it became, there was 3 of us, and it became like a full-time job. There was like 10 hours of research and 2 days of editing and 6 hours of recording to put out like a couple hours show and we were doing huge remote viewing projects on top of it. So it was insane. We ended up working like 4 days a week on it, going like, what the hell are we doing? This is making like $400 a month. This is madness.
Hey, thank you for making those, because I haven't seen you guys and heard you guys talking in person, and I've watched all of your videos. So hearing you guys talk in person, I'm like, oh man, these guys are like stars.
Yeah, stars in like a tiny niche world of making woo-woo remote viewing videos.
It's good stuff, man. I've loved it. I watch it while I'm driving around cleaning pools.
Oh, thanks. But yeah, with the Psychic Guys, I was like, I'm never doing that again. So now I barely edit anything. I leave pauses, I leave I leave the bits where we have connection issues and we're sitting there going, so let's talk about something else while we wait for their internet to come back up. And we might have an interesting conversation, we might not, but you gotta just put up with it. Because I'm like, anything that adds to the workflow, we didn't even have proper thumbnails for months because I was like, I don't want to commit to doing anything every month because it adds up, right? So I'm super lazy, and I don't feel bad about being super lazy, and I make a point of making sure that I can stay as lazy as possible, because that way it's actually going to get done eventually. It's going to get released. It's going to be good enough. There's a lot of stuff in there that's interesting chat. You just listen to me say let me Google it. You just have to do that occasionally. And that means you get the podcast on time and we don't burn out. So I'm finding that for me is a much better compromise than 4 days a week.
I think that's the way to do it, man. Get the quantity out there. We're all listening.
Oh, thanks, dude. It's nice to have good feedback.
That right there sounds like an engineer's approach to creativity. Be as lazy as possible while still making it as good as possible.
Maximize the value, right?
Line. Yeah, exactly.
Excellent conversation there, guys. Dimi, you had your hand up for a while, but you've taken it down. Did you have something you wanted to ask or say or share?
I did. I might forget it also in between. Okay. Yeah. I had to pick it up from Don's. I wanted to say that we all do mind probing all the time when doing RV, and when we need that. So it's like a channeling type of things without I'm never emotionally involved in this kind of chat, but I want to move further from that because my main question or my main idea, which we talk about many more times prior, like month ago, maybe years ago, is that I began to think that any biases that we have as a tasker, even if we said, like you said, you always said in your tasking, you only have to see this structure, you only have to see this event or whatever, is somehow going through little steps in the viewing of the viewers. So my idea is that probably only when you are like triple blind, you can get information, because as you said, people are talking about precognition as the main explanation for how remote viewing is working. But we know about Pat Price and the water tower, and that it was built long after his death. So that's an idea. But I want to talk about these things because it was a person who earlier posted something on your wall on Facebook, on your group wall on Facebook. And he was talking about using denying or in tasking, in the tasking verbiage, like don't be biased by whatever, or you'll disregard myths and legends and talks and whatever. But I think you cannot avoid this. So this is what I wanted to talk about. And if any have any other ideas around or everything on it, I want to hear about, because I really think almost you have to be triple blinded in order to have like pure data. You can have good data, but somehow all the things are running through your data from all over. So that was my question, talk, whatever. Yeah, this is it.
Are you worried or concerned that there might be information coming from the tasker or from other places as well as just the tasker?
The main reason of what I'm wanting to say that is the tasker is the main source, but we already know that it's like a big blanket which can have all the ideas, all the biases, all the everything from past, from present, from future, which can be involved in the tasking in a way or another. We know that, but I think the tasker and his intentions are my main concern on slightly moving the sessions around his ideas, his biases, his whatever. Yeah.
It's definitely an interesting topic. I just don't know if we can come up with a way of proving.
Are you
it one way or
talking
another.
about my presentation, Dimi? I'm not really
No,
sure.
no,
I know what you're-
No, all RV.
I picked up from what you say about channeling Akhenaton on your presentation, starting from the idea that we already do probing mind, sorry, in our RV sessions, but we can be, and we have a talk about this, Dawn, like a month ago regarding your project, if you recall. And I was saying to you that I'm kind of,
You thought there was an overlay.
yes, without even you knowing it, without even you wanting that, of course, but there is a possibility of overlay on that. And you're not my main point. I was kind of wanting to talk about this long before you brought it up, into discussion like a few minutes ago. But it was tangential to what you've said, kind of, yeah.
Can I respond to this?
Please,
Because I'm
Fabian.
hearing something interesting, I think. I think you make a good point. When I was doing a lot of tasking, I found that I was often surprised by what the remote viewers returned to me in terms of their data. So I felt like my personal biases were rarely played a big part on what remote viewers were seeing. But I think at the same time, it would be important and very interesting to know how many people and people that are here tonight now, how many taskers make note of what their biases are regarding their targets. Know what those things are and report it and have it as part of the report. I think that would help with what you're asking about, so that if we know what the tasker biases are, then we can start to measure, well, how much of the data is coming from tasker bias versus some other source. So that's my immediate response, because I feel like my personal biases have not often played a big role. But I'd be curious to see if you believe you've had some tasker bias impinge on how you reported data, or if anybody else in this group has had experience with that.
My idea was coming from watching sessions, from watching taskings, like from years ago till now. So I picked up, as I said to Dons, from Dons, because we have already a talk about this overlay, which can come or not. But there is a slightly possibility that this is the source of some results from sessions of the viewer. So yes.
Carl, do you want to answer this one?
Yes. So it's not a slight possibility, it's a very big possibility. You can, viewers can also view each other's sessions and skew the sessions as well. But that, Fabian says everybody should be doing it. Anybody who's tasking should be right. That's part of the protocol.
Process.
You should be writing down your bias. Yeah. So we've just done this course with Irva. We had Gail Husick doing a project managing course. And she was very specific in this as a professional project manager. She said, when you're doing the tasking, when you're being the project manager, don't look at the sessions until you've got all of them. Because when you see the first session, you'll go, oh. And then all the other sessions that come in, you compare them to that. So you have to take your own personal kind of attachment to the first thing. You form like an emotional attachment to something that comes in. So she said the best thing to do is to wait until you've got just say, acknowledge the email, say, thank you very much, got your session, and then get the block, because you form as a task, as a project manager, you form an emotional attachment, and that skews your whole data and everything. And just for the record, the other thing Gail said was that every single thing in everybody's session means something. Even like the vaguest little scribble, it could be related in some way. So rather than pick and choose with the information you're getting, you should find a way, because even if one person says, say you're looking for a painting, one person says, this building here, and none of the other viewers get it, that one person might have been right. Yeah, or the painting could have gone there before it went to the other place. And that's like a really useful part of your... So you have to be... And even Courtney says it too. He says, you should look at your feedback on your own before you actually share your session with anybody, because even you can put yourself on a feedback loop and start affecting your own session. Yeah, from the feedback. So these things are they're really, really slippery, and it's very important.
I think those are really good points, Carl. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think, can I summarize that as an approach which I have developed accidentally, which is to get so bored and fed up of doing esoteric woo-woo stuff that I just don't care anymore. what the outcome is. And like you say, I do it all at the last minute. I acknowledge the email, and then eventually it's like, oh God, I gotta look through all these sessions. Not aliens, not aliens, not aliens. Good, fine. You know? And there's no, because a factor which I've observed to cause this problem with tasker overlay and even like the tasker wants to please the client and the client wants something in particular, or the client is your audience and they want something in particular. Like everybody who looks at the session work ever is somehow kind of entangled into it, maybe. And it seems that like the emotional intensity, like people's emotional, I really need this to be true. Please, please. I've spent the last 2 years writing a book on this. Do not tell me that it's like it didn't happen. Right.
Yeah.
When you got that intense emotional need, that really drives the psychic fuckery.
Got an idea for making the tasker blind to the potential results. Just throwing this out there, if I can. Why not have the tasker flip a coin in a box, a shoebox in advance, do the tasking, depending on if it's heads or tails. You know, if it's a 2-part tasking, if it's, you know, team A or B is going to win, the tasker doesn't know, you know, which one is going to be associated with team A or B.
That's associative remote viewing.
Yeah,
but to
that
blind
doesn't
the
work.
tasker from the associations done.
Okay, I walked out of the room for a minute. Maybe I missed. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm totally wrong. With
We're talking about more generally, like if people are just RVing anything, and the
Yeah,
tasker really
in my
wants the
case,
answer to
I
be
was
this.
doing a historical target, yeah, and I specifically
All right.
mentioned ARV is not gonna cut it here.
Gotcha. Okay. Sorry.
But it's
In
not just
ARV though, you can blind the tasker to the associations, and that is helpful when judging, because even if you ignore psychic effects, right? If you really want Team A to win because you support Team A, you're maybe going to look at the viewer's sessions and go, "Oh yeah, I can see loads of matches for the Team A associated target," because that's, you know, and that's just how what we have inside us distorts our perceptions. It's not even necessarily a psychic effect. So, yeah, that was true in the ARV case. I agree.
Yeah. We also have to extend this, of course, as we slightly discussed, to the clients, because the clients usually have a very invested interest in the outcome of the target beforehand as well, and we have to be very careful. I think, and I've started putting disclosure statements on all my RV, and I think all remote viewers should put out a disclosure statement on their RV as well. That
Well, describe that a little bit, Des. What it is that you're talking about?
Well, on all the projects I'm doing now, especially the ones without feedback, I'm telling people, that RV without 100% feedback, we don't know where the information's coming from. It's very possible it could be imagination, and we also know that, and we don't know how to counter it, and we don't know how remote viewing works, but we're discussing it now, a topic that we know that the tasker has a telepathic effect on the viewers, and we kind of feel that the client probably does as well. And we know that, from previous scientific experiments, that everyone involved in the experiment had an effect on the target results. So if the scientists running the test were highly skeptical, then the test would usually fail. But if the scientists running the tests, were a bit more open to remote viewing or psychic ability, then the test would usually, be accurate and be good. So everyone involved in the project has an effect on it, and we have to let clients know that, just because, like, for example, I recently just released a video with Carl and Dimmy on the looking at a piece of film footage of an alien being interrogated from 1997. And they got, everyone got great data on that, but there isn't 100% feedback on this yet. We don't have absolute data. We do have the video, of course, and the client has done 2 years worth of research into validating that video. But he's the client, and as David said, he's very invested. He has a pay-per-view video coming out. He has books coming out. So he wants us, he wanted us more than anything to validate that as being a real target. And because we don't have, absolute ironclad feedback, we have to tell the people that are presenting the information to that, you have to look at this with open eyes, and just because we as remote viewers are reporting data that looks like it's accurate for the target, it might not be, because we don't know how this works yet. There's a huge chain, there's a huge chain. And as David said as well, I've been saying this for years, I'm convinced that, like us putting out that video about the alien interview, the 3,000 or 10,000 people that have watched that on YouTube, and then they're discussing it in comments and discussing it on the X platform and stuff like they are, I believe that all those people retroactively have an effect on what we did as remote viewers when we were getting that data as well.
Wow.
Again, we can't prove it, but to add to this, I did do an article on my remote viewed website for those people haven't seen it. I collected remote viewing from 3 famous remote viewing projects. I think one was run by Ed Dames, one was run by David Morehouse, and one was run by Courtney Brown. They all ran separate projects looking at TWA 800. And all as taskers had different faults, I guess, in their own mind of what they thought was the cause of the crash of the plane TWA 800, which is why each of their different sets of viewers running it all came up with a different explanation in the RV data. They were all different across the board. So that to me proves that taskers and project managers and clients might have a very influential effect on the remote viewing, and no one's really explored that to date, which is why I think we should all put disclaimers on our work.
That's a very interesting point.
But Daz, I mean, that's that famous thing that you did. I'll never get over this. You did one tasking, I wasn't on it, but you made a thought form of a place, and you had your remote viewers describe the place. And they described it perfectly. The one I was on was astonishing was when you imagined yourself at Stonehenge at midnight. And I was describing Stonehenge, and suddenly something went splot across my vision, and I was going, oh, what's that? And I've got the drawing of the splot, and it just came in and out. And I'd seen you go to the site and come back. So, there's a lot of weird stuff.
Yeah, we just did that one so little about this
as well. And I think I got Stonehenge. I drew the rocks, so I was kind of there. But I think I vaguely remember there was like a weird energy thing hovering above it, but it didn't look like Daz at all. It was a swirly, whirly.
Well, my energy for it probably
like
yeah, what do you look like, Daz?
Well, wibbly wobbly.
It was a splot. I had a curved splot like a ribbon of plasma. And I've been reading research about plasma, and it could be that we actually move our plasma to view. So
I don't know. Daz has a lot of splotches going on behind him. There's a lot of splotches back there. That might be what you were seeing.
Don, I don't know if you saw this. It was an experiment. I think I did it on Facebook. But I set the target as being Stonehenge at a point in the future. And I set the target to the remote viewers. It was only slightly into the future by about a week or so. But then there's this extra part of the target. I kind of, at the time when they were meant to be viewing, I sat here at my desk and I kind of tried to move my energy self to be hovering above Stonehenge to see if they would pick me up at Stonehenge at a point in time.
In a frame of 5 minutes, if I recall well, yes.
Yeah. And the viewers generally did describe, some kind of energy thing hovering above Stonehenge.
Ooh, pretty cool.
Yeah, so it was a bit of just a fun thing, really. But all this, that we're describing just goes to show we don't really know the because I think we've all experienced this ourselves. RV, our intuition, seems to have no boundaries. You can, you can go inside people's heads, minds, ideas, theories, all kinds of stuff. So that's why I and we don't do it enough. I don't do it enough in my working life with future forecasting group and stuff. But we should really caveat everything that you need to be careful how you use this information. You've got to use it with other credible sources a lot more than moving across the world just because a remote viewer says that a bomb's going to explode kind of situation.
This brings up a point with Courtney's stuff. they never give you the tasking statement. That really bothers me. Okay, if you don't have the tasking statement, what are they remote viewing?
I would like, if it's possible, to know Naim's opinion on that biases or tasking, if it's still here.
Yeah. I don't know. It's complicated, I guess. I think ultimately the viewer's intention is actually what drives the session. That's what I think. So, like Joe McMonagle always talks about his shortcut where he just tries to satisfy, let me get what this tasker wants me to get answer. I think that is how it works. So if you want to actually see the target, then you could see the target. If you want to satisfy the client, then you can satisfy the client.
Hey, I did that. I heard that advice directly from Joe, during his podcast or whatever, and I tried it on a Dick Allgaier target. Let me just give the viewer what he needs. All right. And I remote viewed Dick Allgaier's target, not the target he wanted me to perceive.
Yeah, that was what he needed at the time.
That's what he needed at the time.
Careful what you wish for, Don.
I mean, ultimately, that could be useful. Like if
you got lucky,
I'm not saying that that's necessarily bad. It can be a good thing if you get the tasker what they want. That's good for them.
Hey, I'm an experimenter. I tried it. Step one, fail.
You just needed to aim a little more to the left there, Don.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, I think maybe information in the in the remote viewing world, in the subconscious, wherever it's coming from, I think trying to find out, and I'm not saying don't try, I'm saying this is the way I think of it. It's kind of like water in the ocean, trying to find out like what river it came from or what, where it traveled. It's like it's kind of all just there, and we pick up on different parts of it for whatever reason. I haven't seen that. In my experience, I haven't had that many times where it was completely obvious that a tasker's intention derailed the session. I've seen it in work, but I haven't had it happen much to me. But I have worked like Dick made the mask target, where we remote viewed a completely fictional place.
Yeah.
That took a lot of intention. Like he did that for years. He was thinking about that scenario. So I think it has different degrees of effect on a session, but I think ultimately the viewer's intention is what drives the information.
With my project, getting back to Dimi and your comment, right? Did Don's mind control the remote viewers? I kind of thought that maybe some other remote viewers would try this target in the future. And I really wanted that to happen because did Don's mind control them too? I mean, is that tasking ID burnt for all time? That's sort of a little scary because that invalidates the whole concept of remote viewing.
Should try giving it out again a year from now. Give it out to some other viewers.
Yeah.
Joe McMonagle and Ed May wrote published a paper called "Intention, Attention, and Expectation." It involves those three items, and it goes along with that same concept. It's all about the remote viewers. What they're going to get is their equates to their intention, attention, and expectation, and it's a good theory on what creates what you receive as information.
It was a good article indeed. Yes.
There's a lot of sessions where the very last thing I do is I tell myself, what do I need to see here? What do I need to see here? And sometimes that ends up being like the most accurate data. But that's different than saying, what does the tasker want me to see? Right. So it's like a very subtle difference in kind of setting the intention.
Does anybody else think that thing that Joe does is super sketchy, where he's saying like whatever is going to make the client happy? And implicitly, it's like, even if that's just a lie, is that we want to make the client happy today, and then
I think it
next
depends on the
week they find
situation.
out,
It's the situation. Like if you're in front, like Joe is in front of a general who doesn't believe in it and just has something in his safe that he wants to know if Joe can see what's in his safe. In that situation, I just want to get, Joe just wants to give that general whatever it is that the general wants to see for that situation. I think it's probably a case by case.
Yeah, that's a different wording, isn't it? What will make the client happy versus what do they want to see? Because what the general will be happy if he discovers that Joe cannot read what is in the safe. So if he's going to make the client happy, he's going to miss the target.
Point.
Right?
Yeah, because some generals don't want it to be real. So that brings up a whole that brings up a whole different thing. Yeah.
David, I don't know what will make the client happy.
It would be worrying if Joe used that in his military life. It would be worrying because what happens if the general wanted information that would allow them to go to war? Or press the button.
Yeah,
Joe gives them the information that they want.
What I do is I do both, right? I prompt myself what true information is most helpful to the tasker. So I kind of filter it both ways.
And also what the tasker's subconscious, so how to meet the tasker's subconscious halfway and to communicate in a way that the tasker can understand what you're trying to get at. Yeah, there's also that communication that you need as well.
I actually did. There's this one session I did, and I was recording it on video, and I didn't really notice until after watching it, but it was a target that was randomly selected, like one of those image generator target sites. So technically speaking, there was no tasker, right? Like it was just pulled from some image pool. But I said in the last part, I said, let me see what the tasker wants me to see. I said that in the session, and I ended up drawing it. I drew the thing pretty much exact. And so I was the only person though on both sides. I did the session and then I opened the feedback after. So there was no.
You were the tasker because
you were the tasker.
You're mirroring yourself.
How to make yourself happy.
Yeah. It worked great in that case. Yeah.
Great answers and questions.
Alexis's take on this, where he says if anything goes wrong with the remote viewing process, it's always the client's fault. And almost always, wasn't it? But he has really good guidelines for them for how to not screw up the tasking and how to ask sensible questions. And
hey, Des, I got a question for you about this client thing. I mean, have you ever had a client? I mean, you're dealing with money, fortunes here. I mean, do you ever have clients that are really angry with your session work? Maybe you had a dot in the wrong place or something. I don't know, because you're creating charts and graphs and whatever. How do you deal with that?
Well, without alienating any of our subscription base.
I'm sorry if I'll walk that one back if I have to.
To be honest, humans are humans. They will. A sub part of humans will moan about anything, whatever they can. The slightest little detail, or you were an hour late publishing something, or we didn't see. You missed a page. Any small bit of detail. But to counter that, there are huge amounts of subscribers and paying people that absolutely love what you do and give you great comments. So it's like being on the internet. There's good people that can handle themselves very well and people that aren't so well at putting their comments across. But I think Liam would say we've been doing this future forecasting now since 2018. So that's that's like 7 going on 8 years now.
So you've got a thick hide then.
But it's daunting each week as well. Especially when we're like we've just been given a task now. We got to do December's news, and it's so noisy with what's going on in the world to try to predict what the top news stories of December are going to be, you know, especially with all the election, pre-election stuff, all the wars, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot, right? You know, there's a lot of responsibility of it. It can be quite daunting at times, knowing that you have people waiting on your every word because they might want to move. You know, and some of the people do
Yeah.
come to us and say, I'm gonna, you know, tell me where to go. I'm going to move country, or I'm going to move my fortune into this, that, and the other. So, yeah, it is a worrying responsibility at times.
This future forecasting, where you're actually predicting the news, you're doing the news. I'm not a subscriber, so I don't know.
Yeah. Every month for the last 7 years, a month in advance, all of us predict what the next month's news story is going to be, and we each do. I would say we probably have about 8 to 10 predictions each. So that's 40 to 50 news predictions every month.
Okay, that was my next question: is how do you deal with like this stack of like everything that's hitting your subconscious about the news? Like, you know, do you realize that this is one thing and then this is another thing, as opposed to, you know, thinking that it's all one thing together?
I mean, I can't speak for Niall. I can only tell you about my experience right now. And the last few months, it's been very noisy. You know, because the world's a noisy place. You know, you can't not pick up, or you couldn't until the election. You couldn't not pick up Trump stuff, or you couldn't not pick up war. You know, particularly war and missile stuff, because you know we've got like 2 or 3 massive wars going on in the world. So you have to learn to try to identify what you think is your bias and noise against what has the feel and flavor of what might be real. But we have all said in future forecasting that the last probably 6 months has been much harder for us to do the monthly forecast because the whole world is a lot more unstable and a lot more noisy.
Wow.
Yeah, I do. Only sometimes I do like a full session where it might be a little more difficult to know what events are connected, or, you know, is this thing on page 4 in the same event as page 2?
Yeah, right.
So,
that right there is a really difficult thing, at least in my mind.
Yeah, I don't do that very often. What I do is I do kind of like I do like what we call like a S5, which is kind of like an ERV. So for world events, I usually do that. So I go down and something will come to me, like a flash or a small movie will play, and I'll draw that and probe that. And that's one event. Then I'll go again and get another. So I treat them each as individual news events. And
Yeah,
I mean, it works for the most part, but it has been a lot harder more recently.
And I do movements as well, Don. Like I'll start off on page 1, and you know I always write my movement at the top. So I'll like say top global news stories in December 2024, and I'll let it just do a random top global news story, and then I'll move later on. I'll say, okay, top financial news in December 2024 for USA.
So this is like a movement exercise within the, okay.
I'm just moving myself around, and I just randomly pick things for that month I think people might be interested in. But I usually try to look at top global news stories, top financial news stories, top Bitcoin news. And then I sometimes go to Europe, you know, what's the top news stories in Europe and that kind of thing. So I try to move myself to separate pieces of news to get things that I think that the subscribers might want to know.
That is an excellent tip. Thank you very much. I like that. Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I'm quite critical of my own feedback of my own targets as well. Like when I feedback and class my own targets as hits in the next month, when you know when the month happens, if it hasn't hit, then if the news story I'm saying is a hit to my data, if it hasn't hit, you know, 10 really good news sources like BBC News, CNN, you know, all that kind of stuff in a Google search for it, then I don't use that as a feedback thing, you know. So when I say top global news, I don't match my data with an event that might have happened in, you know, in the outskirts of one city and it was only in one paper kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same here. I don't even try to look for it. I try to make it so that it will be something that you see on the news. Like literally you go on the BBC and it should just be there. I shouldn't have to type
But-
it in and go.
To be honest,
find
we
it.
don't have time.
Well, you have a task. You have a group of people that do that, don't you, Naeem? That actually check, in the month.
To be honest, Don, our subscribers are because we have thousands of subscribers. They're actually the best for that because they're looking at our data and they're scouring in the internet.
Oh, good.
They come back for
Okay.
us and say, "Hey, look, this matches your data."
Yeah. Okay.
And then we have Sean that does an analysis, and I don't always agree with Sean's work, or I don't always agree with the subscribers may call a hit. You know what I mean? But that's that's for people to determine on their own.
Me too.
But for me personally, if I'm going to come out and say something is a hit, it should be unambiguous and it should be an actual major news event that's on major outlets and ideally like front page type news.
Because Naeem and myself, we did really well on predicting that there was going to be an assassination attempt on Trump a month or two before. Yeah, that was really solid.
Yeah, you're Naeem. That thing where you drew the bullet. Wow, holy smoke! That was amazing.
Maybe if I could share this, I have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 images. And this is something I shared with Dennis. We did a podcast the other day.
Yeah, go for it.
But this is just a line of data over the last year and a half that all were, it's Trump's data, but this is not a political thing. I'm not American. I didn't vote. I'm not for or against, but just an interesting line of data. Starting with the election.
We're not seeing it in the moment, mind.
Yeah, 1 second.
Yeah.
So we did I forget when this was. March for Future Forecasting Group, I think we did.
March.
Yeah, we did who's going to be the next president. Daz passed that out to us actually. And this is a screenshot from that debrief and my drawing and description, and I pulled up the picture of Trump in that debrief and said, okay, I think it's going to be Trump.
Wow, you're getting pretty good at sketching faces, Naeem.
Yeah. So that was the first data point. That was back in March. Then this was in April, I think we published this one. And this was looking at the second quarter of 2024 news events. And this was, I had an assassination attempt on a political person in front of a crowd giving a speech with a assassin elevated up on the left side. And then June, or I can't remember what month that attempt happened on Trump in Pennsylvania. So that was a world events session that we did.
Yeah, and I'd like to point out that you've got that line there on the lower right where that's the bullet.
Yeah. And that was so that wasn't a tasking like, oh, what's going to be the assassination attempt on Trump. That was just trying to see major news events, right? So there was no intention targeted on Trump in this case. The first one was an actual president, task on who's going to be the president. Then in, I can't remember what month this was. Maybe August, I think we published this one. I saw a person with a gun and I said, he comes out of a vehicle. There's a manhunt. He's like an assassin shooter, and it's going to be a major high profile assassin shooter story. And there's going to be a manhunt for him. And this one, I did a movement order. Like when I saw a guy with a gun first, then I said, okay, I need to see his face, because the number one criticism I got on the last one was it could have been any assassin story, potentially. So this time I said, okay, I got to draw this person's face. So I see the face, I draw it. And then the next month was, I think it was in September, this happened. Ryan Ruth was, he was in the bushes at a golf course and he fled and they captured him. So that was another Trump related news story. And he's just, I guess, a lot of news is about him. So maybe this was why it was coming up so often. There was a lot of major news stories.
Can I just ask you how you come up with these facial, sketches? 'Cause that's pretty amazing.
I just look on Blackboard. I set my intention that
Can you hold it on Blackboard, or is it you've got 1/16th of a second of an image that you're recalling? What's going on?
For this one, maybe it was like 2 seconds.
2 seconds.
Yeah. But yeah, it is difficult to remember the face sometimes, but that's kind of just got to go with it and try and work in the moment and
It's
sketch
impressive.
down what you remember.
That's very impressive. I'm sure you've probably heard it a million times. If you put it online, I haven't seen it, but that's very impressive. I'll say it again.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Thank
bang
you.
on.
Don't
excuse me.
forget the importance of learning to draw well as well.
Yeah.
Artists always get the best visuals, so learning to draw rather than trying to do special RV tricks.
I wonder
where it's
about
at.
that, David, because this is more like, he's sketching from a mental image. So this is, I'm not sure. I don't know. Naeem, do you have a point on this? I'm not sure, any drawing training is going to help you, or maybe it does. I don't know.
It will help you. I mean, we all see things every day, but then drawing them is the difficult part. So it's the same thing in a remote viewing session. So I might see a face, and if I didn't have prior, I do portrait drawing. So, knowing the proportions of a face and some of the basics of facial composition can help to draw it in the moment. You know what I mean? I don't have to remember perfectly what the face looked like, but I just have to have a good idea of what it looked like. And
where do you start?
I usually start with the eyes, or the hair, because the hair is kind of the first thing I'll notice. If you see someone for a split second, usually the hair is what you're gonna, get the shape. The main shape of the hair will be obvious.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Oh, cool. I was wondering, were you viewing the events or the news reporting of the events? Because that picture where you could see the bullet right behind him, that seems like you were viewing the picture that was reported in the news, right? I can't imagine you were viewing the event and you just happened to actually see the bullet moving in your viewing of the event, right? So I'm just curious, what was your target there?
I mean, my belief, and I have no way to prove this, but my belief is that both of those things are possible. You could see what's reported in the news, or you could see the actual event. My belief system is that a portion of the viewer's awareness goes to the target site and actually perceives things. That's just my belief, just from my experience.
Right,
yeah.
for sure. But so, can I ask, did you see a static image? Did you see a static image of the bullet, or did you see it moving?
For that last one, this was it's a series of images. So first I saw the crowd and the guy, and then as I'm probing, other things kind of pop in. I see the person's up on the roof, and then I saw it's kind of hard to describe, but yeah, a bunch of different impressions happen in that time period, maybe over a minute or two as I'm probing. Different pieces of information come in, but I've seen
also
images in motion before. Yeah.
Interesting. Also, I was wondering, where can I see? You kept on saying, you published these predictions. Said you published this to me. You published it. Where can I see predictions or remote viewing sessions that you've published?
Well, most of these that I'm showing here were published in advance on our private site for Future Forecasting Group. So, unless you're a subscriber, you're probably not going to see these in advance. But I have past work, and I do updates on my YouTube channel where I'll post all of this stuff. And yeah, on my YouTube.
Can I ask what your YouTube channel name is?
Yeah, it's Naeem TV, NYIAM TV.
By the way, I'm not asking that out of doubt. I'm not doubting that you did predict these things. I just would like to see what you're currently predicting for the future and stuff like that.
Yeah, no problem. So Yeah, the face drawing thing, it helps if you have experience drawing faces.
Yeah.
But yeah, it helps if you can see the face too, because that it helps. Then this was published in October. This was for.
Can I ask a not totally related? Oh, sorry.
I'll just wrap this up. This was in October we were looking at October, November, December major news events. And I saw auditorium room, a lit stage, people clapping, cheering, congratulations, acceptance speech. And then I see a male figure. I said, that looks like Trump, central male figure, presidential, duty of office, serve America, celebration. So from that, again, I came back to the conclusion that I think it was going to be Trump in November. And then the next month, just last week or a couple days ago, was the result there. Trump won the election. And just another little tidbit, interesting data point. We did a session on Elon Musk in 2023. And I had this image here. I saw the Capitol, and I said, Elon is somehow going to be associated with the president, or overthrowing the NWO. These were the kind of impressions I was getting there. And at the time, that was very out of place. I almost didn't want to put that out there. But now we see these are news reports just from the other day. Trump has the world's richest man on his side, and he's elected Elon Musk as the head of the Department of Government Efficiency. So just some interesting data points that came out over the year.
I have for the Irva presentation I did, I have a few more of yours that I can show as well, that you gave me.
Yeah, that was what's his name? Greg Abbott. We did a session on Greg Abbott. And see, this one was interesting, especially when it comes to a visual image letting you know something instantaneously. So I saw a bunch of people in black robes. And so without probing, the first thing I knew was, okay, this is like a Supreme Court justice. Like, this looks like a Supreme Court justice group picture. That's what I wrote there. And he was a Supreme Court justice. So that one was
I wonder.
That was a interesting one there. And then
did you get all this information? Did you get all this information? I'm sorry if I'm like talking over you at all. The connection is really bad, so sometimes like I only hear that you're talking like way after you started talking. Did you get all this information like visually? Like, for example, you said that you saw Trump's acceptance speech. Did you like know it was an acceptance speech like from what you saw, or did you just get the like intuitive impression, like outside of what you were saying, like non-visually? Did you get the impression that it was a acceptance speech?
So first, I get the visual, and I try not to make too hard of a conclusion of it right away. Like, obviously, it looked like a guy on a stage, but it could be anything, right? So I draw the visual first, and then I probe, and that fills in the blank. Then I, hear the people cheering, and I get the sense of congratulations. So it's a mix and match of visual and intuitive impressions. Yeah.
Can I ask what exactly how do you probe? Do you like ask, like do you put the question into words in your mind? Like what's your process for probing?
Well, I mostly use HRVG methodology, so we kind of have a pre-planned series of kind of probes that we do. So immediately when I see an image, I'm going for a probe on, a kinesthetic probe, like what is the concept behind, what's the sense I get at this target. I don't really start making specific questions until I know, until I've gathered a bit of information. Then I might start formulating questions like, what is this about? Or is this political? Or is this governmental or civilian? And questions like that. So.
Right. So one more time, what did you say is the remote viewing program that you do?
It's HRVG, Hawaii Remote Viewers Guild. And this one was from Skinwalker, the Skinwalker Ranch target that we did. Dad set that one up too.
And then it goes on to Edward stuff, so I won't show. I'm sure that's enough sketches.
Hey, so now that Elon Musk is in the government and he's in this efficiency thing, and Trump owes him for all of the money, so I guess Elon is going to get some privileges here. I'm wondering if he's, the next thing I think about Elon Musk is SpaceX, right? So is he really after the anti-gravity technology?
Does he believe that exists? Like, he doesn't believe UAPs, or he doesn't believe in UAPs or aliens or anything, I don't believe.
I gotta believe he's interested in digging that up.
Elon says that, but he wants to be buddies with NASA and be able to do all the things he does. That's what you got to say if you want to be those buddies. NASA doesn't open that stuff up publicly.
Don, my take on it is that I think Elon just wants change. He saw the way that the FBI and the intelligence agencies had infiltrated X, or Twitter at the time, and he bought that at a huge loss to himself. He's lost a huge amount of fortune because he won't take advertising from people that tell him what to do. But he also kicked all the intelligence agencies out of X. So they don't control it anymore. And he knew he did that at a loss. And, I believe when he says he did that because he wants freedom of speech and he doesn't want corruption, I believe he's actually bringing that to what he wants to do to the American government, to be honest.
I believe it. I think that Elon does have 100% pure intentions and is trying to do everything that he says he's doing. I think there's a little extra in there. I think he knows more than he lets on to, and he's a big gamer, as anybody that follows him knows that he plays a lot of games. He thinks about games on many levels, and he understands that if he comes out and starts saying, "I've seen the evidence on UFOs," that he's going to be labeled differently. And I think he's smart enough to play the game the right way and not come out and say, "I've seen enough things to be suspicious about what may be real."
Well, if we see a difference in his propulsion system over the next couple of years,
I don't think there's any chance that he expects that he's actually going to get some sort of jump on the propulsion systems. And that's a big thing because he spends all of his time trying to learn those propulsion systems. But no, I think that's completely separate. I think he's smart enough to understand there's something going on there, but he is still obsessed with what he's obsessed with, and that's just the way it is. That's what
all right. Yeah. All right. Back to you, Des.
Oh, well, we're coming up to like the 2-hour mark. So in the next 7 minutes, and anyone got any other questions or anything that you want to share? Rebecca, you got your hand up if you want to go for it.
Yeah, thanks. It's actually Jim. That's my wife. The name. I use Microsoft Teams all day, so
yeah, no worries.
Yeah. No, I'm not a remote viewer yet, but I'm going to make the jump. I think this is super interesting. I appreciate you letting me in to join the group here, because I'm an engineer and I see things from very scientific. And since I've read about remote viewing and saw some of this, I've kind of taken that and put it to the side. So there's really this is like something that can really change science for positive things. So. But my question is the tasker. If the tasker is very passionate about the target, does that influence the session at all? Because typically people that have an event happen, whether it's good or bad, the emotion makes it stick in their memory. And I didn't know if the tasker was somebody who had passion or emotion for that target, if it helped the session at all.
I think it can do both, and it depends on the the tasker. I think there are some taskers out there on the circuit doing stuff right now that are so biased in a certain direction that all they would ever see is what they want their viewers to see at targets. I task lots of targets myself, and I always write down my intent on the on the tasking so everyone knows it. And when I'm doing it, I do try, even if I have a bit of a belief system, I do try to keep a very open mind, you know, as I'm writing and setting the target and setting it out to the remote viewers. So I think it does depend on the tasker themselves if they can try to be as unbiased as possible, but I guess it's hard.
Okay, so the tasker's bias can influence the session.
Yes, I think that happens quite a lot, but we don't know how to measure it or prove it.
Okay, no, sorry
I
for
would
the
agree
question.
with
I just I knew from what I've read and seen for the viewer, you know, it influences because of their memories. I just didn't know that happened with the tasker. So
I would agree with that, and I would add sometimes the bias, it might even come in from a tasker putting tasking something specifically that forces the target to be biased. So if you are a tasker who believes in aliens and you believe in certain things, and even if you're looking for the truth, if the absolute truth of something that actually happened, if you word the target in such a way that you're specifically asking the viewers to see what crashed in area and was taken to Area 51, if you put in stuff that you think you know about a target, then you are influencing and you're biasing your own target.
Yeah.
So sometimes if you have to try, like when I was targeting, I had to challenge myself to come up with ways of writing a target that never mentioned anything about what I was trying to see. Sometimes it would just be targeting, okay, what happened this date at this time in this location? Leave it like that so that you are not putting into the target anything that's going to bias people. A lot of taskers don't do that, and I think that's why you'll see a lot of bias come in. But that's been my approach, and then in addition to doing that, because I'm thinking about something that might be woo-woo, I also write down what my intentions are.
okay.
An example of that I saw that is now the one that I trot out, which is just what you were saying, Fabian, but just a ridiculous extreme example is some of this UFO footage where the video is just like a blob of light going across. And it's like, one of the taskings is describe the craft and its occupants. And it's like, it's a spot, you don't even know that there's a craft or that it has occupants. And then I think the ultimate contrary way of doing it is to get the video still, draw a circle around it and say, what's this? Why are we seeing a spot on the video? It could be cosmic rays, it could be a bug, it could be anything.
I have one general question, if I could ask towards the last question of this thing. So we can do this physically as people. Do you guys think that eventually there will be an AI or some sort of anything else that we can simulate this to in any way to do this besides people doing it?
That was discussed at the IRDA conference, right?
Some of the people at IRVA were working on it.
It's been tried. It's been tried. Henny tried many times.
So I'm
positive.
curious. Okay, so a lot of you think that it can be done. There's a lot of people that think. I'm curious, Daz and David, what do you guys think? Can it be done?
No.
I don't think
David
so.
says no. Daz,
you said we could do this physically, right? What makes you think we're doing this physically? Do we have like a little remote viewing muscle in the brain that's like,
we're a physical creature that's pulling it out of somewhere.
Not necessarily a fully physical creature, right? I happen to think that consciousness is the underlying principle, right? And we're more like a receiver for it.
Is there a physical thing that we are living in? Are we physical in some way?
Yeah, but it is the physical thing that we're living in, the thing that allows us to perceive things, that breaks all the rules of the, why does remote viewing work on a submarine? there's no physical
question.
process which has ever been
In
found,
some
right?
way, some way, can something else simulate what we are doing?
Okay, if you can build a machine that consciousness can kind of incarnate into, if you like, in the same way that it can a human, then you have an interface to the broader consciousness through which you could get information.
Okay, so bigger question.
You can't
then.
build
Okay,
a dumb
okay.
machine.
I
right?
love this. I love that you are skeptical of the idea. Let me ask you one step further. Do you think then, if that is created, that it will be able to push forward the limitations that we currently perceive on this ability?
I have no idea. I don't know what it would look like.
Well, wait a minute. There's already research where they're hooking up a brain to some sort of a headset, and it's drawing the picture that the person is looking at.
Yeah.
That's
they've already
different,
created,
though, isn't it? That's
artificial
looking at
telepathy.
a.
You may have
looking
seen
at
that
a
in the
human
news
brain
or whatever.
doing the
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, I've seen that. I really want to try it with RV. It's a cool idea because then we don't have the problem of having to learn to draw, do we? We can just get the visuals in our head and they'll come
Daz,
pop
do you think
straight
that's
out. It'd be
possible or
great.
not? Do you think it's eventually going to happen?
I've got different viewpoints than David on this, because I believe that
Also.
within the next few years we're going to have artificial general intelligence. I think they're going to have conscious AIs.
But will it be able to remote view though? That's the question.
Possibly. We won't know
Will it
until it
have
happens.
access to that?
So I'm sure you guys have heard about do you guys follow the science on the people that are trying to recreate it? Like microtubules is the
Yeah.
mechanism that they think that in our body that creates it, and then there's somewhere else in the brain that actually changes from the microtubules over into the conscious awareness of it, or the
But that's like the microtubules are the kind of antenna which allows the quantum woo-woo consciousness woo-woo to interact with the brain, right? And then they're
you
the
just said
boundary
quantum. I heard
between-
you say quantum.
Yeah, I know it's a dirty word, but in that case, it's actually correct to use it.
Yeah, it's like the interface between our awareness consciousness and the greater consciousness field. Whatever this field of information is that we're swimming in when we're pulling our data down.
Well, thank you guys for doing this.
Yes.
That is part of
that
the
question that you just
orchestrated
asked?
object reduction theory from Stuart Hameroff and what's the other guy's name?
Penrose.
Penrose, yeah. And one of my favorite genres, if you go on Twitter, Hameroff spends the whole day yelling at people about microtubules, and he just finds like random research. Yeah, of course it doesn't work. It's because of the microtubules. And it's just great. It's so entertaining. He's so angry about his microtubules. And honestly, for what it's worth, I think he's right as well. That's great. Sorry, sidetrack.
I like where this conversation went with that question. I think that question was yours, Chris, about will there be an AI that can tap into this? And suddenly a debate started. But I think if we wanted to reword your question to say, will an AI or a computer ever be able to tap into the same information field that humans tap into? I think that would get you a different question, because that's what I spend a lot of my time researching. What is the nature of the information field? And if you look at the research of people like
Jacques Vallée.
Jacques Vallée is one. I was going to say Michael Persinger. Michael
I haven't heard of him.
is
Michael
one.
Persinger.
And another one, massive, is Itzhak Bentov. If you look into what those people have been saying about
What was the second one? I'm sorry.
Itzhak Bentov.
I just put it in the
maybe
chat.
I can type that up for you real quick in the chat.
It's in the chat. Yeah.
Oh, Itzhak. Okay, thank you.
Oh, I see it. Thank you.
So yes, if you look into what those two people said about the nature of the consciousness field and how it is this electromagnetic field around the Earth that we are now starting to discover, well, not now, we've known this now, that the air around us, the nature of our atmosphere holds beyond trillions of terabytes of information that they believe that is what remote viewers are tapping into.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
question becomes, can an AI tap into that same information? And the question, and they would say, I think, because they have passed away now, they would say yes, because they know the frequency that information is held at, right at 7 gigahertz.
It's a natural
So-
part of nature. Animals do it too. It's not
Yeah.
something
Yes.
that's mystical that only
Exactly.
people do. It's not so,
So,
I mean, it's
in
mystical,
fact-
but it's
But
Yes,
how would
so
that work
if
with
humans-
non-humans? They won't. They might not have the same magnetic fields that we have on Earth, but they claim or they have telepathic abilities.
Sorry, I missed the first part of what you were saying, Daz.
If it's only linked to the magnetic field around Earth that stores all this information, how does that affect non-humans? You know, because we have all these claims that alleged aliens from other dimensions or other planets are more capable than this, and they might not have magnetic fields.
Yes, well, I would go beyond that and say that Earth is within the solar system's magnetic field,
Yeah.
and the solar system is within the galaxy's field, and all of these fields are connected. We are swimming throughout the Earth magnetic field, and it's not just the magnetic field, it also goes into some of the things like we are plasmic. We have an electroplasmic relationship with the universe.
Yeah.
And so I see Coral is reacting to that too. We are plasma, and we are electric. And when you look at those aspects of what we are, then you will see how we connect to the universe and how we interface with information. So the moment we have an AI that is designed specifically to interface with that same electroplasmic landscape, we will have AI that is able to remote view.
it's gonna do it better than we do it.
Oh, it's going to do it much more efficiently than us because we have doubts. That there are animals that can perhaps remote view and interconnect with their systems. That's why animals start freaking out long before people do when there's an earthquake or a hurricane on the way, because they do not doubt themselves. Their instincts instantly kick in, and then they have answers for themselves that cause them to go into hiding. So humans, we are so developed that we're so intelligent that we're stupid, because we have developed to a point where we start questioning ourselves constantly. So once we get past that, and once we stop doubting our instincts, and we listen to our subconscious, we will become more efficient. AI is going to be better at that than us. So that's why I think AI will be remote viewing as soon as we start putting this data that we already have. We've known about Itzhak Bentov's findings since the 70s. Same thing with Ingo Swann, same thing with Michael Persinger. All these people have had this information out there, and we keep scientifically trying to rediscover it, and we keep finding the same findings over and over again. And so few people are putting it to use. So yeah, we need to, I'm gonna go with a problem in society right now and point at what we call conspiracy theorists. All the people who are fighting against the idea that the universe is filled with plasma and electricity, and saying that only Einstein was correct. Those are the people who have created the scientific landscape that we base everything on right now. And that is the landscape that keeps us back from truly understanding remote viewing. The moment
Can I argue that? Can I argue that? I
Sure,
think
go
I
for
mean, and I'm sure you'll just agree, and I'm just saying a different version of what you're saying. All that's real, but we've gotten locked into that as being the only reality, and we don't look beyond that into anything else, anything more than that. I don't, and maybe I feel like that
I
stuff
think
is
you may
real,
have
but
agreed with me some there.
I think I did, probably.
I
did.
agree with your statements. We are locked into a way of thinking that says everything has to be based in a universe that is defined by gravitational physics, and that is not necessarily the true nature of our universe.
Well, and the thing is, they haven't married gravity and time, but they say those have to marry somehow. Or
They say that.
there's the big physics and the small physics. I forget what it's called, but they can't mix them those two together.
Relativity and quantum mechanics.
There you go. And when those two mix, maybe that'll be the key. I don't know.
Well, the problem with that would be a forced mixing. The reason people are struggling so hard getting gravitational big physics to match with quantum physics is that gravity is, it's not the big answer that physicists want it to be. If you look at the nature of the spin of a galaxy, if you look at the way the Big Bang Theory is, Big Bang Theory, as soon as people start questioning that more often, gravitational physics will lose its stranglehold, because all of gravitational physics is pointing at and saying the Big Bang Theory is the beginning of all this. How can we make everything make sense around that?
I like the way you think, Fabian. You're a good man. You're questioning.
Oh,
You're
I
asking the big questions.
I had to. I always had a hard time with what I learned in school about gravitational physics. I asked questions that my physics teachers would say, we don't really have an answer for that, but Einstein said this, and Einstein was really smart. Well, guess what? There were a lot of smart people, and a lot of them were silenced during the World War II era. You have people that said key things in history right around the same time as Einstein, and they were silenced. Specifically, you can look into people like, oh gosh, like everyone is starting to finally listen to the things Nikola Tesla said. And that's only recent. I never learned about Tesla in school, and my daughter's not learning about Tesla. And so still, we don't know anything about, okay, I'll say this. The things that are being taught in schools have nothing to do with what science is beginning to uncover as being the truth. And those things were introduced in periods from the 1930s through the 50s. And because they did not fit into Newtonian and Einsteinian physics, they have been silenced. And we saw those all as pseudoscience. So Nikola Tesla fell into that era. And another scientist who I'd recommend, who people are now finally starting to listen to, is Birkeland. If you look at Birkeland, I can't think of his entire name, but it was Birkeland.
Durkheim.
Burkhard, well, that's Burkhard Heim.
Durkheim.
Yes, that's another one. Listen to him as well. The German physicist, he was magnificent. But Birkeland is a different scientist I'm talking about now, is the scientist who theorized the way currents travel from the sun to the earth and cause the electromagnetic interferences that we see in the atmosphere. If you look him up, you'll see where he was discredited because he believed that space is filled with plasma, and his focus in all of his physics was saying, what if all of outer space is plasma? And electricity travels through that plasma, and everything we see in space is the result of plasma interfacing with electric currents. That's the nature of how we get a galaxy, the nature of how physical masses form. So if you look into those things, you will find an alternative view of the Big Bang, and you'll see an example of where remote viewing can rise, because you'll see the interconnection of everything as a result of plasmic internet. The universe is basically an internet that we can plug into as plasmic beings. And a lot of science brings that up, but it's all stuff that is not mainstream science. It's all been silent since the 1950s. So that's the long answer to your question. The moment scientists, and it doesn't even have to be a respected scientist, it's going to be a not respected scientist who believes in woo-woo things that will develop an AI system that has the ability to interface with the Earth's field, which is, of course, connected to bigger fields. that's going to be the scientist who creates a remote viewing AI. So
It's
that's
coming.
sort of,
One way or another, it's coming.
Hey,
yeah.
I gotta interrupt here for a second because somebody posted this thing about the Vatican lawyer on the Remote Viewers and Remote Viewing Facebook group, which is the Vatican lawyer, underwater aliens, and crash retrievals, Danny Sheehan. I met this guy. He's real. That interview is, you gotta see this thing. Apparently, he's been working with the Jesuits. We think of all this Catholic stuff when we think of the church, but they are trying to understand consciousness. And Danny just came right out and said it, that they believe that all physical matter has consciousness. All physical matter, all.
Well, that makes sense. That makes.
That's huge.
It's not
That's
that huge in the
huge.
remote viewing concept, because it all interacts for that to exist through time. For that to exist through time, it has to all have something that interacts together that makes sense. It is huge and it makes sense.
But Don, I covered that, if you can remember it, in my Irva presentation with my examples of how I found that cryptocurrencies had consciousness.
You did say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't relate that. I didn't relate the two at that time, but that's very interesting.
And yes, that is a good way to start looking at these things. If you look at everything as having consciousness, a lot of people will get confused at first, but you can simplify that thought to change your definition of consciousness. Don't think of consciousness as I'm consciousness purely because I am self-aware. Think of consciousness as if there's a rock outside and you're aware of that rock. That rock is a part of the consciousness field. There's information about that rock everywhere. So the moment you acknowledge that everything in an environment is part of a consciousness field, when you get up and you walk, you don't walk into the wall, because the wall is a very key part of your time consciousness. So you can say everything has consciousness because everything exists within consciousness. So that can take some of the woo-woo out. And so then suddenly you can start talking about psychics. I said psychics. I don't like the word psychics, but you can start talking about remote viewing or things that are extra sensory. You can start talking about those things as, oh, I'm conscious of this thing in my environment. I'm conscious of that wall. I'm conscious of a radio station. Like if remote viewing is just your brain acting as an antenna, then you're tuning into various radio stations. Well, that's just a sense. If a blind person can walk around their house and feel and form a map of their home based. Do you see where I'm going?
So that's why General Stubblebine can't walk through a wall.
Exactly. Well, right now, walls are time sensitive, but all quantum physics and all that stuff aside, let everything in your environment be a part of your consciousness. And then you no longer have to be confused by the idea of all things are conscious. Sure, all things are conscious, but then collapse that and say there's one consciousness, only one consciousness throughout the entire universe, and you're a tiny part of it. And if you look at things that way, then concepts like remote viewing become much easier to take apart and understand.
Well, I'm still experimenting with trying to channel the rock outside.
Before we go, guys, because we're approaching 2.5 hours. I did notice that Andy had his hand up for a long while. Did you want to answer your question, Andy?
Hey, no, I was just curious if anyone in the RV community has really explored kind of the spirituality that some people might see this kind of overlaps with, and almost to the degree of like evidential mediums who have direct spirit, feel like they have that connection and getting their thoughts on some of this stuff. I mean, we're all speculating here, right? But I'm just curious because with the overlap and stuff, yeah.
Well, I'd like to answer that because the project that I did at IRVA had ghosts in it. All right, the remote viewers were like perceiving ghosts coming out of portals. They were drawing faces sticking out of, swirling clouds, handing us information on a plate. They had a specific goal and strategy. The remote viewers were all talking about this. I didn't, when I channeled these beings, I didn't pick up on any of this. And I thought it was fascinating that they sketched this stuff. So, yes.
Yeah, throwing it out there. I mean, there's clear evidential mediums that prove stuff, right? I mean, they could do brain studies on them, and I know they are, right? And I'm just curious how maybe that might overlap or possibly give some insight to how some of this stuff works.
I
That's just
have
kind
an
of
opinion on that too, if you
yeah.
guys aren't sick of hearing me ramble. And my opinion is that, sorry, I'm also editing on a computer over here. My opinion is that people like Jesus and Buddha and all the those great minds that have basically formed religions behind them. And I've said this before in a different interview, but I think that a lot of them essentially were doing something like remote viewing. In remote viewing, when you're the tasker and people start sending you their data, there is often a core that is overlapping with different remote viewers, where you can say, oh, your data matches up with this data and this data. And then there is the data that is kind of outside of what matches what everybody else is saying. So there's the fluff out there and a core that's common among all the viewers that ties it all together and tells a nice story. And my opinion is that those minds like Jesus and all those great prophets of the past is that essentially they're like remote viewers. And in the case of, we'll focus on Jesus for a moment, he's remote viewing a truth, and then he's sharing that. And then but he's also sharing it with all that fluff as one remote viewer. And then you have somebody from another religion that comes in and they're sharing the same core that perhaps Jesus said, but it has a different sort of fluff. So it becomes a different religion. So I think a lot of world religions that are based on the viewings of a particular seer, I think they're essentially remote viewing and sharing something. And the core might be the same, but different religions are essentially the fluff. They're decorated by the fluff of they're painted by the viewings of a specific viewer. So I think
there's a lot of truth to that. That sounds good.
Thank you. So
I'm
glad that made sense. I feel like people, it's like that thing, that ancient saying with you have wise men come up and touch an elephant. Somebody feels the trunk and they say it's a snake. You have all that. It's one elephant. It's one truth, but you have a bunch of viewers touching it in different places and they all say something different. I think that's the nature of what can create a religion. So
are you saying it's possible? Are you saying it's possible to view not just like events or whatever, but it's also possible to view like metaphysical truth?
Oh, hell yeah. I think metaphysics is metaphysics.
You may not understand the answer
of actual physics. Because actual physics is a bunch of scientists getting together and saying, okay, we can't discuss metaphysics if we want to come to an agreement on anything. Because metaphysics is the world of, it's the everything. It's the nature of how we know anything. And so you have to, from there, what you want, and you create physics as a result.
So, should add the metaphysics rapidly gets into territory which is beyond scientific investigation. We can't make a special machine to investigate the nature of divinity or whatever. And a part of
But
all
what
of these paths of discovering that is self-transformation, right? So yes, you can psychically perceive metaphysical truths and great spiritual insights, but if the individual doing the perceiving is not equipped to understand and communicate those, then what's the point?
Yeah.
I did it years ago. I gave someone a target that was a huge Buddha statue, like one of those real massive ones. And he was a Buddhist, but he described himself as a bad Buddhist, a lazy Buddhist who didn't really do very much meditation, didn't do his work. And halfway through the session, he's in stage 4, and I was monitoring him, and he's like, "Wow, wait, there's nothing. Wait, it's not nothing, it's no thing. Oh my God." And he had like this direct perception of this idea of like there not being a thing or a not thing at the same time, like the non-duality thing. But because he was totally blind to the target, he got to experience that, like, not with any intellectual overlay or imagination about what it's supposed to be like. He got like the raw, honest experience of that thing, whatever it is, which was really cool. So those opportunities there for sure.
That came up a little bit in my project too, where one of the remote viewers described the whatever it was as unperceivable, untouchable, powerful, elite, and some other things. And I was like, how do you get a perception like that? You know, it's like describing nothing. You know, it's wow.
Why do you think mystics write music and poetry instead of scientific papers?
That's the question.
I thought that was a joke. I thought it was a punchline.
No, it's because you can't communicate these things. They're ineffable. That's what ineffable means. You know, you can't make them intelligible in dualistic terms because they exist outside of the reality that we have the equipment to perceive and communicate to each other on Zoom calls.
What I wonder is what exactly is the perception that people get when remote viewing of metaphysical truth? You know, like when we're remote viewing an event, like, you know, we see things, we feel things, we hear things, but like, how do you remote view something that has nothing to do with sensory perception?
Oh, that's a good question, isn't it?
Like emotional, you have to look at that a different way, I would think, because I've had some experiences that I can't put into words, and they certainly had this kind of spiritual feeling to them. And in situations like that, I think you just kind of listen to your emotions, and that's why we are fallible, because our emotions tell us certain things that make us react a certain way, and that can easily be painted into religion. So it gets dangerous. What your question gets to a dangerous place, because sometimes people want to enforce that that's the actual truth, but they're not quite able to share what the true
You mean
truth
their
is.
interpretation, their own overlay and reading of that experience rather
Yes.
than, yeah, but I mean, Jesus said that, and he said, like, don't follow me. You know, it's like the finger pointing at the moon. It's like, stop listening to the teacher. They're kind of saying, you need to go look over there, but I can't tell you what it is. Like
Yeah.
the big truths can't be told. Yeah, there's
You know,
secrets.
that
There's
goes
secrets
what-
in the occult orders, right?
Yes.
Ooh.
It's
not,
again,
it's not like you can just go find them.
yeah, that's like what Don was saying earlier, his spirit guide, or Don, when you were talking earlier about how you were channeling and the channel was telling you to, was making you try to experience it for yourself rather than it tell you anything. That's the way a lot of this should probably be done. Have people have their own personal experiences.
Well, Fabian,
I'm sorry,
quite honestly, what I was experiencing there is what really fascinates me about channeling is like asking these questions like, can you describe yourself? Okay. The beings that I've been channeling, they don't describe themselves as wearing a suit of clothes or anything like that. They describe themselves as more like a thought, consistencies of thought that are looking to connect with others for enlightenment. They want to increase their understanding of truth, and they call that growth of understanding enlightenment. It's like really fascinating.
You can Try this in a session, Don. If you've got something that is not a life form, but is conceptual and is tricky to understand, ask it to become a person and explain itself to you. And you can have a conversation with that construct.
That has
You can
been
use
pointed
the
out to
lens
me
of the
just
person.
recently, and yeah, that's going to be
Give it
something
a try
I
and
want to.
see how
Yeah,
it feels
see,
similar
I
or
have.
different to what you've been doing.
I've tried to channel lost items, but generally the lost items are always in a dark place, and all I'm getting is a lot of blackness. All right, nothing is
How
really
is
coming
that
across.
channeling as opposed to just moving your awareness to where the item is?
I don't
And
know
and
whether I
Don,
can't
if
do
you're
that. I don't know whether I can do that or what. All I know is that generally for lost items hidden in a satchel that was zipped up or something like that, it's like I have not been able to. Actually, remote viewing was doing better than channeling there.
Don, if you're looking for a lost item and something's turning up dark, have you tried shining like a flashlight on it?
You
Light
mean
up.
like light the area up mentally?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
no,
Mentally light
that's
up
a
the
very
area.
interesting idea.
Yes. My big problem when you and I were remote viewing together, we ran into the problem of when you were monitoring me.
Right, we were
I
doing
kept
ERV,
viewing
folks.
things. I would view things, and you would tell me, what size are you? Make sure you're perceiving this from the size of a human being, because I would look at things from a microscopic point of view, or I'd be upside down and all this kind of stuff. So when we worked together, I learned that you need to specify your size, your direction, and sometimes you just have to make sure you're looking at something optimally. And so if you're seeing something dark, then you need to shine a light on it, and then you might get closer.
That's a good tip, Fabian. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm a total beginner. I got here from the link on the Discord server, and it kind of sounded like it was just like it was for everyone. You could ask questions, but now I see it's like all experienced, like, master remote viewers, and then me, a total beginner who knows nothing. So
No, you can ask
I'm sorry about
questions.
that.
No, it's
But
fine. Ask questions.
what is channeling?
Okay, Daz has a different definition than my definition.
No, I don't. I spent many years channeling before I came into RV. I don't know if you know, Don. I wrote a book on channeling.
I did not know that. Well,
Comedy Central is my favorite channel.
All right, so here's my sort of like take. When you remote view, you are perceiving things that are in this space around us, what you might call space-time. Channeling is like perceiving a specific intellect in space-time, the same space-time. And what I find interesting about channeling is you are contacting a set of thoughts and memories that can answer a question directly. You're contacting their intellect, and they have already stored and organized the things that have happened in the event space that you're kind of like looking at in the way that a human mind organizes things. And we call those things memories. Does that give you an idea?
So, like, could someone use channeling to read the thoughts of someone else or something like that? Or is it only to like non-human entities?
Well, but to be perfectly honest, I don't try to read people's minds. I don't want to influence people's minds. And, aside from my kids asking them whether they're going to come today or tomorrow or something like that, I don't do that. I suppose you could.
You're able to communicate with your kids like telepathically?
No. I can maybe read their minds, and they are completely unaware that I've done it.
Oh, I see. So, what's like process the channel? Like, do you have to like remote view an area and then you can like sense an intellect there and then you can channel it? Like, how exactly does that work? What's the process? If you don't mind me asking.
I open my mind to the notion that I want to set up a communication path with the entity that I'd like to contact. And then I send out a test message to ask them if they can hear me. And then I ask them if they're willing to have a chat, a communication. And then I find out if they're willing to do that, then, and I'm perceiving their words clearly, then I'll proceed. Takes practice.
Well, how do you know there's an entity there, and how do you know like what to call it? Like, how do you know what, where, when, and how the entity is?
Do you hear my voice answering your question? Same thing.
Yeah.
If I could I say what I perceive a difference between channeling and remote viewing might be, and you can tell me if I'm completely or what the difference is. So it sounds like remote viewing is like trying to query a database that is the whole universe, just a massive database. Channeling sounds like you're querying or asking a question of a brain or a previous brain, something that's been curated, a smaller database that is has only certain amounts of information and is easier to access specific types of information.
Kind of right, other than there never has to have had to have been a brain. Because that's
you can
assuming that all
channel
life forms have a
trickster
brain.
entities and made up shit all day, and people do on YouTube. You go look at people channeling all sorts of mad stuff, and it tells them stories like you're
So
a
wait,
really
wait, wait, wait.
special
So there
part
never
of
had to be
the
a brain. There never
narrative.
had to be a brain.
No,
I didn't
no.
follow that.
Nope.
I thought channeling. Okay, wait. I thought channeling had to have a previous.
Well, it doesn't have
existence.
to be a human or a dead human. All right, you can have a conversation with a rock
yeah.
psychically. It's not a very interesting conversation, but you know, it's about consciousness.
You can have a
not-
channeling
not
conversation
brains.
with a leaf.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can have a channeling conversation with a leaf.
Or a non-human life form from the far reaches of the universe that never had a body.
But at the same
Or a
time,
trickster that's gonna tell you a load of
So I
stories.
follow. So it doesn't have to be a brain. It just has to be a
No.
living thing or a thing.
No,
not
it
even
doesn't
living,
have-
just a thing that had an
yeah.
experience, and it is that thing's experience that you are channeling.
No, it doesn't even have to have had an experience. It can be
no.
reflecting your own experiences back to you. Like thing is about as specific as you can get. If you think about the word channel, right? Remote viewing is the protocol where we have a specific target. We do it deliberately. We do it blind. We record our perceptions. We get feedback. And we got all these methods like CRV where we're going, what color is it? What does it look like from above? Blah, 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 blah. And doing this Q&A thing where we're asking for information. We're getting it. We're not having a conversation interaction. If you think about what the word
So
channel
what-
means, a channel is
What
a
did you say that was
conduit
called?
through
CRV?
CRV, yeah, that's controlled remote viewing. It's the military way of doing it, but there's loads of ways of doing it. There's the HRVG that Naeem does. There's loads of methods. Doesn't matter which one you use, but remote viewing is the protocol you do the method within, right? It's the rules of the lab experiment. So you can do channeling within the RV protocol, like Don was doing. It's remote viewing, right? You can throw bones, you can read tarot cards. I don't care as long as you are blind to the target and you write me a nice summary that explains what the target is before I give you feedback, right? Doesn't matter. So channeling at one end of the extreme, you've got trance channeling where people go into a deep trance, they become like unconscious and they're sitting there and like something else's voice is coming out of them. And then when you wake them up, they don't remember what happened and they've been like talking to people and doing Q&As and they're basically like possessed, you would say. And then it's like a sliding scale all the way up to where, you know, you're almost having to find the words for them. And there's a continuous stream of stuff and there's a back and forth, but you're having to kind of translate. And then somewhere in the middle, it's very, very clear. And it's like having a phone call, but you're still awake and you're still kind of involved in the process as the channel. So it's not like one thing. And it's happened to me as well, like with a dead guy once who wanted to talk to somebody I was talking to, and like he just showed up. And when I'm doing remote viewing, it's like I want this, I'm going to get this. It's Q&A, and I'm asking the questions. This thing, there was like a presence that just appeared and was like, I'm waiting, and I had to ask my friend. I was like, think this guy's here. Do you want to talk to him? And
I
that like
would
happened out of the blue. It never happened to me before.
I would say if
And
for those
that
that
was
have had
crazy.
it, for those that have had it happen, I mean, it's like a knowing. It's like a presence.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
very, very apparent and very clear. Yeah, just
I started doing my like remote viewing beginning thing because that's just how I'm in the habit of getting into that state of accessing psychic data. And this guy was there laughing at me, going, "What are you doing that for? I'm already here." And I'm like, "Yeah, leave me alone. I don't know how to do this."
Who?
I'm sorry.
Who
Can I
asked
ask
the
a bit of a
question
like?
about channeling?
I did.
Ask. Oh,
Scott?
Can I ask a? What?
Oh, the reason
Sorry,
I
can I
asked
ask a?
is, yeah. I'm sorry. We're going.
No, you go ahead. Sorry about that.
I was just going to try and answer that question from a different perspective. That takes it kind of out of the, I guess, the usual realm. If you're a computer person, you can look at channeling in a slightly different way that makes different sense. If, for example, channeling, where we were talking earlier, Daz said you can channel a leaf or you can channel almost anything. It doesn't have to be a being that had previous experience. Nowadays, now that we're living in a world of AI, you can think of how you can create an AI that is customized to you that can answer questions for you, as though you have programmed. It's, in some ways, you can look at channeling as programming a little piece of the universe that has the right knowledge, but you need an interface to be able to communicate with it.
yeah, you've done that on your podcast, right? Yeah, you actually interviewed someone that had been deceased, right?
Yes. So
You have a podcast?
And
Where's
so,
your podcast, Fabian?
Yes, well, my wife and I started a podcast a while ago, and it's gone on hold for a little while because other projects have come up that got a bit intense. But I work with AI a lot. And AI, what I'm really enjoying with it is its ability to describe aspects of human consciousness. Because, of course, in order to create AI, we have to have some basic understanding of how the human mind works. So to imitate that, you have to practice creating little people. And so you can program something that will serve as your interface. Say I was wanting to ask questions of Einstein is no longer alive. But if I wanted to talk with Einstein and understand his opinion on things, I could ask an AI to go on the internet, pretend to be Einstein by researching all of his information, everything he wrote, and it can do that in an instant. And then I can say, all right, AI, ChatGPT, respond as though you're Einstein. What is your opinion on blah, blah, blah?
Yeah,
So
I've never seen anybody do
like
that before. It was so cool. And it really worked. I was like really impressed with what it came up with.
Yes.
It was like just really interviewing. You were
Yes.
interviewing, the person.
Mm-hmm. And yes, if it's programmed well enough, you feel like you are interviewing that person. So regardless of the woo-woo stuff of souls and conjuring beings and stuff like that, you don't have to look at it that way if that kind of slows you down and has an interference with your personal belief systems. You
Okay, so
can
now
look at
I'd like to point out, Fabian, that what you did was really cool, first of all, but it couldn't.
I'm not sure what
give
you're
you-
referring to.
But it couldn't give you new information like what I was getting in my project.
Oh, no, that is different. You're
I
right.
was getting new, not in history information, which was consistent, led me on a different sort of like a path that I had to investigate, further. And then the remote viewer sort of like, it came up with a similar story. That's pretty interesting, really.
Okay. Well, Don, to what you're saying, which continues on my same point, is you don't necessarily have to conjure a specific spirit or anything like that. What you can do, since the information exists within an information field of our universe or just our Earth or wherever you're pulling it from, you can program a being to embody that information that you can interface with and communicate with. So if you
you're calling
want
that
to-
channeling then, or where are you coming from?
well, I will say it is an approach to channeling, because if you are finding information that is not necessarily in any history books and you feel that that information is coming from a particular being that lived at that time,
Right.
that
Yeah, I
being-
hear the words. I just hear words. I ask a question and then I'll hear a word. I'll say a word in my recorder. I'll hear another word. I say a word in the recorder. It goes like that.
yeah. So that
Can I?
so no, I'm gonna let somebody else come in. Yeah.
No. I'm sorry. I thought that you were. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Where I'm going will make more questions come about. All I'm saying is that one of the approaches to channeling, you don't have to necessarily believe you are channeling a particular spirit. I think that is a possibility, but it's also possible if you are not conjuring something, because I think there are risks and there are dangers to inviting an entity into you. If you wanted to bypass those risks and get information that is not necessarily coming from a living being or a conscious being or some kind of spiritual trickster being, if you want information straight from the information field, which is where a lot of remote viewing might come from, you look at people like Edgar Cayce, who believe they tapped into this field and called it the Akashic Record. Those people are not conjuring a particular being. They're tapping into Akashic field, which is basically just the information field that we live in. You can tell that to form into a person that I can talk to, a person that's never existed necessarily. You're talking to a computer interface. So that's why I wanted to ask who was asking this question. If you're a computer guy and you understand virtual machines and you understand AI, that you can spin up an AI that will pretend to be a particular person, you can you can treat channeling in that way, where you are spinning up a virtual being that can embody a personality and you can ask it questions. So that's how
but it's confined by the data that's all available through the internet. Okay, there is no, memories, thoughts, or whatever that's not contained in that box.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
Can I ask another? Can I ask a question on a different remote viewing topic?
Not. Well, we have someone with their hand up. Andy, you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I was gonna switch
Hand
it up
up.
real
What do you
quick.
mean?
Oh, I
What
was
is
just
a
raising my hand real
hand
quick.
up?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask.
Wait, how does that
for
work? How do I do that?
It's onto the reaction things if you're on your phone. The question I was going to switch it up a little bit too, is does anyone on the call have any experience with pros, cons of using dowsing for more specific questions? Not so much location finding, but more so yes, no, very clear, type of questions. I'm curious for those on the line, how many people have seen any cons to taking that approach with remote viewing?
Sometimes I use a pendulum.
I do too. I'm just curious what other people do, and if you've had any. It works well for me. I'm just curious if others have had any downsides of doing so.
I think a lot of us have had early experiences with that kind of thing. My early experience was with a Ouija board.
I wouldn't. Yeah.
A lot of people have, spun up all of this demonic stuff about Ouija boards. But when I did it at 18, it was dictating poetry in Old English.
Yeah, it was.
It's sort of like where your head is at. You want to contact demons, you're going to get demons. If you're nervous about it, you really don't know what you're doing, you're a little scared, it'll scare you. But
In
we were amazed. We couldn't
I was
even-
just gonna sorry, I was gonna say in the context of the question, it was more so I find when I do it, it's almost when I'm in that borderline state, am I doubting myself? Like, is it male? Is it female? I think it's this, maybe it's just masculine, you know, feeling, not actually a male. So then maybe I doubt myself. And that's where I could see maybe there'd be some cons there, is where you maybe get in a place where you might be doing it too much just because you're doubting your subconscious, and maybe that's a bad path to go down. But
Okay,
It
so
is.
my
You should trust
recommendation,
yourself.
honestly, is to start recording these perceptions in some sort of a document, because they are educational. Over time, you will build
yeah.
up, you will build up a
I've-
knowledge base of stuff that is just going to vanish the next day if
I've
you
got
don't write it
a
down.
nice big binder of all my stuff I track. It's awesome to look back and see patterns and all that stuff. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay.
I got a couple of dowsing or muscle testing pro tip techniques for working unblind, which I use, which maybe if you haven't got a pendulum handy, I do this one unblind if I'm just like, should I do this or shouldn't I? You get both your hands, drop them down and reduce the muscle tone until you're just keeping them floating, and then say, to your subconscious, please indicate option A, and one of them will drop. And then please indicate option B, the other one. And then, all right, which one should I do? And now you just like really gently lower them down, like you're letting the air out of a tire, and eventually one of them will just go. And it's like when you do an ideogram, you're kind of allowing the pen to move, right? So you can do things like that to give your subconscious a little opportunity to speak through your body.
A lot of
where you're
the
not
stuff just seems
biasing it.
like just different tools to access subconscious and information, right?
Yeah,
So it's like
it
what works
all
best
is,
for
yeah.
you. That's kind of how my
Mhm.
approach is to things, right? And
I like that one because you can do it when you're out and about. You don't need to get the pendulum out and frighten anybody.
I mean, it seems very similar to like ideogram stuff, right? Like I started
Yeah.
out not embracing ideograms, right? But it's very similar in a way that it's kind of like a physical reaction to interpret information subconsciously, whatever, right? So.
Remote viewing is all just interpreting how your brain interprets information, or it's how your brain interprets information, figuring out how your brain interprets information. And it's all
Mostly
just,
translation.
you got to explore
communication.
different things, and you're gonna find different things work better than others.
I'm
You were
very
saying
much
about
visual.
the doing sex as well. If you're doubting because you're like, wow, this person feels kind of masculine, but I don't want to be rude if it's a lady. Like, what do I do? Right. There's this great technique in Prue, now Birdie's 2001 TDSRV training videos that you can find on YouTube, where she's like, you just get them in front of you and you just kind of have a feel and see what's between the legs. And I did that to verify my presidential election prediction and was correct. It's weird the first time you do it. You get used to it.
You get in trouble for that nowadays, David.
Not psychic.
I'm trying to figure out if you're serious. It sounds like you are. So.
I know. I absolutely am. Use kinesthetics. You can do stuff like that.
Oh man,
guys, we're gonna wrap up in it. Should we let Mendel there ask his one last question before we go? Do you want to ask it, Mendel?
Yeah, thank you. I could only ask one question, you said?
Yes, because we're gonna wrap up in 5 minutes.
All right. Right. If I am a total beginner, and again, I'm sorry, if I had known that this wasn't really for beginners, I wouldn't have come on the video chat. It seemed from the link on the Discord server that wasn't the case.
Yeah, no,
But
you're
if
welcome.
I'm a total beginner, if I'm a total beginner and I want to do what all of you guys can do, like where do I start? What do I do?
Go on the
say
Discord or the
something?
Reddit and find the beginner's guide because it's super quick. It's like 20 minutes, explain some basic concepts, give you a run through.
Right, so I've tried those, and with mild degrees of success. By the way, I will tell you that I do have like pretty strong doubts. I'm not at this point. I think that there's a reasonable possibility that remote viewing is a reality, but I'm not convinced of it.
Can I say something?
But
We all started there.
I'll say if you
Go
believe it, you'll probably get some better results in practice, right? You got to have that intention in my mind to yeah.
You have to buy Joe
Right.
McGonigal's Remote Viewing Secrets book. That is the one book that will it is such a non-woo-woo book. It'll send you to some other books. That's how I started. That book found me rather than me finding it, and it changed my life for the better. And when I was in a dark time, go find Joe McGonigal's Remote Viewing Secrets book. That's my word to you, friend.
And I'll also toss in a quick thing.
All
Joe
right, thank you.
McGonigal's wonderful to read. I'll also toss in for me. It helped. I have done my best remote viewing when I didn't care about the results. If you are feeling pressure about having to prove anything, then you're probably going to do a bad job. I think the best remote viewing comes from just not being tied to the results, being nervous about it, freaking out about all that stuff. I actually really like to have a drink. I was at the IRVA convention in 2023, and I did a remote viewing session in front of 50 people on a board, and I think I never would have done that previously, but I had several shots of Jägermeister. And so I was on target, and it was one of my best sessions ever in front of all these people, and I had a great time, and I did not care. So my trick is just not caring about what's going to happen. Just do it.
Go super
Practice.
quick. Don't second guess. Don't
More
judge.
experiences. The more you're thinking
spam
about
out
it,
the page.
the more difficult it's going to get, and that's all I'm going to say.
Right. Well, I one time had when I was younger, so I was a magician, and me and my friend, so I watched a Russell Targ speech, and I was like, you know what, I might as well give this a shot. I had no idea what I was doing, but I had my friend pick a random card, and I had him look at it, and I closed my eyes, and I like looked at a light, and like with my eyes closed, and I like saw like like shapes and basically yeah, I guess the color, the suit, the number, and I got it right, and I got it right again, I got it right again. And this went on for quite a while. And then I stopped doing it, and then I went back to it a few years later, and for some reason I couldn't do it anymore. And I don't know, like I don't know if it's like, I mean, maybe like I was wrong and like nothing was actually happening. There was just luck. Maybe I lost the ability, and also like I don't even know if that's a kind of remote viewing. Like I wasn't following any program or whatever. I just said what I saw behind my eyelid.
That's pretty normal that it's shut down on you like that. I mean, when you're doing things spontaneously and you're like, it's not going to work, who cares, whatever. And then when you're like, holy shit, I can see what the cards are going to be, it gets a lot of parts of your mind involved that weren't involved before, which can then get in the way.
So how do I go back to being able to do it?
You'll never be able to get the first person perspective again. It's not when you first there is a phenomenon you will, but there's a phenomenon that is known as the first time effect,
beginner effect,
beginner effect, and that is you won't achieve that again. You'll see it again, but
you can years and years and years later.
Yeah. And it's a thing that you have to practice, and you will achieve that again every once in a while. There's no magic key to it. You just have to keep practicing, and that's basically what it is. It's not, there's nobody can teach it to you. You have to learn it yourself. You have to learn how your mind perceives information.
Well,
Excellent,
what
guys.
should I
think
practice?
That's a good place to stop this, I think, for the evening, because we're going on for 3 hours now.
All right.
But thanks for everyone for coming along. And as always, I'll get the video of this up online as well. And Mendel, thanks for the questions, and keep asking questions and keep practicing. Thanks everyone. Have a great weekend.
Cheers.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye
Mando,
bye.
if you want to ask some more questions, get on the remote viewing Discord because you can ask then in text and there's a
The
bunch of people
Discord,
on there.
the Discord that had this link on it.
Yeah, just go in the questions
I'm already
channel
on
there.
that.
And
I'm already on the Discord.
cool.
Yeah.
Ask away. Beginner questions very welcome in there.
Okay. Thank you.
Night, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Night, everyone.
Take care. Thanks, everyone.